Hey, what's going on? Hi, welcome everybody. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. Brought to you by Jeff Gerstmann, your host, Jeff Gerstmann of Jeff Gerstmann Enterprises. That is not the company name. Maybe I should have registered that. I don't know. Maybe that should have been the name of the corporation, the shell corporation administering this filth into your ear holes every Tuesday. These friggin' vagabonds kicking down the door and going, video games and energy drinks. Anyway, what's going on in the world of video games and energy drinks, everybody? I hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday morning after a weekend. 3-day weekend for some folks. That is again another weird thing of like there's no corporate calendar that tells me when the days off are. And so like the real situation is that there aren't any. There are none. So recorded the new episode of Game Boys to Men yesterday. That'll be hitting you on Patreon later in the week. Is it an LLC? It is not an LLC. It is a It's an S corporation. I don't know. My accountant said to do an S corp, and I said, okay. And so we did, and I now get emails all the time from some like, you need to click here to just get your business licenses or whatever. I don't know. So it's a whole process here, getting set up to be a company. Because everyone loves companies, right? Let's get serious about it. The humans are corporations, so why not start a corporation so you can have a corporation in front of you to kind of shield the blow, so that you, the person, don't have to. Right? That's the whole thing, right? It's you do the whole thing. You have to fill out like bylaws and like, yes, how many shares of stock and this and that, and like I don't. It's just me, man. I guess that's 100% me. I'm gonna take over the board of directors with two of my idiot cronies, and we're gonna muscle our way in here and say, "Goddamn, pal, get these idiots off the air." But I digress. Hey, it's winter time, which here in Southern California does not mean that much. We had our rain as the rest of the state did, and survived that here, but obviously the rest of the state got hit pretty hard. And it's been cold, which you know what that means. It's time for the furnace to stop working. I don't have the soundboard loaded up. That would have been an actual appropriate time to use it, but alas. So yeah, so today is going to be if you're watching live, this might be a somewhat weird experience. Because the heater man is supposed to come at some point during the exact time frame of this program, and my wife is not here right now. She's out with the kids for a little bit, and so if the heater man come while she away, then I have to get up and let heater man in and point him at the heater and go, it doesn't work. So there may be a somewhat extended break somewhere in the middle of the show. But if you're not watching it live, I will have cut that out because I am a benevolent ruler. No? Okay. Well, anyway. So yeah, I don't know. It's having trouble catching. It's not igniting. Sometimes it's just like sitting there and clicking, and I'm like, hopefully that doesn't mean that like it's just like leaking gas into the, and I open it up, like I don't smell gas. So my point is, the house is probably not going to blow up today. This time. Yes, the CO, the monitor did not go off and say, "Yo, y'all got this gas." So that's yes. I don't think the house is going to blow up this time. We'll get them next time. Yeah, so that's been, because it does get a little colder in the house. Cold for kids. Cold for my wife. I'm like, the heater vent in this room, I actually have covered it up. I went to the internet and I typed in stop it with the heat. And they have just magnets that you slap over heater vents. I'm like, yes, that is what I'm looking for this room that already has 2 computers and 4 screens in it. It's warm. This and 2 windows that get morning sun. This room is not a problem. So yeah, that's been something I've been dealing with the last with a 4090. Who needs a heater anyway? That thing, honestly, so I'm still sleeping in this room with my son. We have not moved him up to his own room yet because my daughter hit a patch where she decided it would be cool to wake up and start screaming in the middle of the night, and so we're working with her on that. She actually is fine now. There was like a week there where she kind of just was getting freaked out. I don't, and anyway, so my son comes down here about 8:00 at night, and I sleep down here with him in my Sonic the Hedgehog bed. And so this room needs to stay a certain temperature too, because he's a tiny boy and he can't use blankets or anything like that. That's something they don't tell you before you become a parent. Stuff like, hey, yeah, I mean, you have to lay these kids down and don't put a blanket over them. It'll kill them. And you're like, what? So blankets are going to, okay, what about a pillow? Do not give that child a pillow. They will die. Like, okay. So just lay him in there bare and let him figure it out. Okay. And he figured it out and he's fine. But yeah, so I am down here. So that is when he cooperates and doesn't get too annoyed by the noise or the light show coming out of these monitors, which I have taped up. You can see it a little bit here behind me. I have clipped blankets and stuff around his little sleeping apparatus so that the light doesn't get in. And now he is strong enough that he gets up and rips them all down in the middle of the night and then stares at me. And he just stares at me. He just sits there and stares and just goes, So anyway, long story short, this room stays plenty hot on its own, and he is fine because, I'm usually in here. That is if I'm getting my Call of Duty in, which I have, 2 things happened in Call of Duty that have really, I thought I was going to keep playing it for like an hour and a half every night. And that I was like, yeah, man, more fucking Call of Duty. But it turns out when I hit the level cap and they took away the playlist that is just the map shipment over and over again, which I was using to grind out my camouflages and achievement related things, related to, leveling up your guns and everything. And they took that away, and I hit the level cap, and I leveled up most of the guns, but not all the guns. And I hit a point where like, all right, well, good. At first I was like, oh yeah, I can get back to the other maps. Now I've got my leveled up guns and I'm gonna get out there. And I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is still a good game, but maybe I need a break. And so, yeah, I think I might, stop playing until the next season starts, because there'll be some new content with that, and they'll artificially bump the level cap up another 250 levels, so you can just do whatever that's going to be. And so I was surprised. I was expecting to continue playing it. I was actually excited, like they're eventually going to take the shipment playlist away, and then I'll play the rest of the game again. And I started playing the rest of the game again. I was like, yeah, this is cool. I don't know. Yeah, it's fine. Have I tried doing the tier 1 playlist? So the tier 1 is like it was like the hardcore playlist in previous games, where it's like, limited HUD, health, much lower health, team. I guess you can kill your own teammates. So I tend to stay away from that mode on account of the kill your own teammates stuff. Ends up usually being a color blindness sort of thing, where it's like I just end up shooting my own team over and over again. And which is, I guess, now that everyone's using their own skins, I don't know how they differentiate between who's who. I guess it's like you get names over the heads, right? So I probably have to, I don't know. I played 1 or 2 matches of that, and yeah, it's not what I'm looking for. Bonk on the Discord asks, how is the Steam Deck with Call of Duty? It doesn't work. That's not you can install Windows on a Steam Deck and do it that way, but the anti-cheat stuff, Call of Duty is anti-cheated up, all up and down, so it will not run natively on a Steam Deck. As a lot of other games that have that sort of anti-cheat built in don't. It'd be a shame if something like a Destiny 2 never never ran on a Steam Deck. That would be unfortunate, because that seems like that would be a pretty good game to play there. You like log in, you're like, I got some daily stuff I need to knock out. I'm gonna log in and just I can do it from the comfort of my bed or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. The Steam Deck, I have been primarily using it for emulation stuff lately, just because I've been sitting in front of this real computer and doing it, and playing games that way, and playing my PC games that way, and have not been traveling or have not been away from the PC much lately. So yeah, I've mostly been using it to play some old games, get some retro achievements in a variety of games. I love that stuff. If you're not familiar with it, I'll say it again. It's been maybe a little bit. Go to retroachievements.org, and a team of volunteers have put together achievements for old games running in emulators. And so PlayStation 1 emulator like Duck Station, or a PlayStation 2 emulator like PCSX2, or a multi-system emulator like RetroArch, if you're willing to use it. You can unlock achievements in a lot of old games, and people are making more all the time. Someone added achievements for Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance on the PlayStation 2 recently. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm going to go play some of that. And I played some of that. I was like, yeah, this game, they were trying a lot of stuff here. And boy, a lot of that stuff really didn't land in terms of just the raw gameplay in that era of Mortal Kombat. It's a very interesting game. And yeah, they honed that engine, that style of fighting over the course of those 4-ish games. But yeah, it's the fighting style, switching between two unarmed fighting styles, and then you have one with a weapon, kind of building off of the weapon stuff from Mortal Kombat 4, and it's a strange video game. It's a very strange video game. Zimbo asks, are achievements easy to install on the deck? Yes, Steam Deck can do all of that stuff. You install something called EmuDeck, EMUDECK. It's really, you're running a script. It is more of a script than something you install, and then it runs and installs all the emulators that you're looking for, and it'll configure it for you, and generally get things up and running really well. And that's been very convenient. There are some hoops you maybe need to jump through in terms of some systems need a BIOS to run, and some, there's little bits and bobs that, as someone, it's something I realize, and I think this is true across the entire internet, no matter what. And I don't think it's necessarily an age thing so much as computers have changed, and you don't need to know as much to use them, which is a good thing. But there's just the number of people you see, and maybe actually, maybe I just need to stop looking at Reddit, because it seems like Reddit was where idiots go to ask for help when they have done zero research on their own. And they just type in like, it doesn't work. And that's so you just see like a post this title, it doesn't work. And then you click into it. It's like, I need it says I need this. It says this error message. What does it mean? And you read the error message, and it's very clear and easy to see what the error message means. It means you don't have the fucking files in the right place. So maybe work on that for a little bit first. And it's just, it's insane how fucking dumb people are unwilling to look it up. I don't know. There's so many different resources for how this stuff works that it's always surprising to me that the people are like, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm trying to use a version of MAME that was released in 2003 because someone told me that one was the best. How do I get the games to go? This is like, none of that is true. What the hell is wrong with you? So yeah, it's whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, the EmuDeck stuff that you install gets you almost all the way there, and then yeah, you have to provide some files for certain platforms to make them work, and that means you'll have to figure out how to transfer files over to a Steam Deck, which is super easy if you have messed with computer, I think that's the, as someone who had used quite a bit of RetroArch and someone who had used just enough Linux to be a danger to myself and others, I was able to navigate the file system. I knew where the files needed to be. I know what files it was looking for and everything there. So, I benefit from just putting in the time. And I think that's the biggest thing with emulation. The biggest, weirdest thing about emulation is everyone just wants the Pokemon game to work, and it's been that way for over 20 years. I think I would guess that the bulk of support requests that emulator authors get is Pokemon related. Like, how do I get Pokemon Crystal to go here and do this? And it's always been like, I can't believe, or you'd see emulator authors saying like, I got death threats, or I got, all my angry email is from kids who trying to get Pokemon Red to run on no cache GB or, whatever Game Boy emulator they are using at the time. And it's, and that's, it's always been that way. I think it'll always be that way. It'll be kids trying to play Pokemon for free, unwilling to do any research whatsoever to get there. And so instead they go, your thing sucks. It's like, no, you're a fucking dumbass. You don't deserve to be able to do this if you can't make it through these hoops. If you can't learn a little something about the fucking world, maybe you should fucking play it on the real hardware and fuck off. It's been like that forever. And so I started emulating things in like 1997 when the Game Boy was realistically the only thing you could emulate really well. NES emulation was starting to happen. MSX emulation was starting to happen. MAME was barely in existence. And yeah, there was no Nesticle. There was no Genesist. And then that Ultra HLE emulator came out and said, this plays N64 games. And you're like, that's bullshit. Oh, wait, it kind of does. Weird. Huh. That's alarming. And it all just got weird and never stopped being weird after that, I suppose. But anyway, emulation is one of my favorite things. I have upgraded PCs to emulate games better before. There was definitely a situation. I don't remember the exact year, but it was definitely a case of like Mortal Kombat 3 in MAME does not run at full speed on this PC. That simply will not do. It's time to upgrade. and on the other side of it, I was like, yes, now we are fucking playing with power. Now, damn it, I can play this game the way it was designed and with the speed it was meant to be played. Yeah, it's just wild. I don't know. Yeah, obviously there's a, and the whole thing of emulators that are out there emulating current systems has been happening off and on for decades as well, because that's something that, again, the N64 emulator hit when the N64 was still a viable console. The Neo Geo was a big one where Neo Geo games were well emulated in MAME while Neo Geo games were still coming out. So like SVC Chaos and some of the later, the last year or so of Neo Geo games. And so that's where you get into a situation where like, oh, this is just facilitating piracy now. And that's a situation that then brings in all those kids that are just like, I heard I can play the games for free. And yeah, that's, I feel for the, there was a PlayStation 2 emulator author that made one for, apparently a really good one for Android, which that's another, if you want to have angry support messages, I feel like releasing an emulator that runs on Android is the way to do it. Because you've got all these kids with their low-powered, crummy, like, oh, I don't know, get this kid one of these Amazon tablets, and that'll shut him up. And so then they hear it'll run the Pokemon, and then it's on all over again. But then you've got to deal with it being an Android system and navigating that file system, and that's I don't know. That's something I'm not even great at. In navigating Android stuff. I've tripped over that a number of times over the years, but yeah, the author of it was called Aether SX2, I think it was called. was basically driven out by death threats and angry, like, oh, it doesn't run well enough. It's like, yeah, guess what? You have a shit ass Android tablet you're trying to run PlayStation 2 games on. Like, guess what? It's not going to be fucking perfect on your piece of shit tablet. Maybe get a better one. Like maybe learn how it works. Maybe do that. And so that person was eventually just like, nah, fuck it, not worth it. I'm done. Congratulations. I don't want to do this anymore. And yeah, it's a bummer. There are incredibly talented people, obviously. In the situation of Nier, and the situation of BeastNess and Ares, and whatever, that group of emulators that turned completely tragic. But yeah, it's disgusting. Absolutely. So I don't know. I am very fascinated by emulation. I have been forever. Just the very idea of, hey, you can make this thing run Game Boy games, and hey, you can make this thing run Mega Duck games. That's the most exciting stuff for me. Other people are like, did you know you can run Nintendo Switch games in 4K? I'm like, I don't care. That's I don't want to. No, I want to run Mega Duck games on my TV. I want to run Mega Duck games at 4K. I want to run Cougar Boy games. I want to run weird Japanese computers that I've never seen before. Like, that's what I'm here for. If you're stealing, if you're just doing it to steal games, it's fucking boring. Who cares? Though, yeah, you throw a little bit more power at a Switch game, it's amazing what you can get away with. Another thing happened. Another strange thing happened. I received an email from an energy drink corporation, an energy drink firm, and they said, "Hey, we saw your videos reviewing energy drinks. Do you want some energy drinks to review? Just not like just an honest, whatever." And I'm like, "Yes, of course, sure." And so we're going to be receiving a mountain of energy drinks in the mail from a company what makes them, which is hilarious to me. I don't know. So as the speaking to you now as the recognized world's foremost resource on low/no calorie energy drink reviews, all I have to say is there's more to come on that front. Actually, I've had this before. This is a Monster Energy Ultra Violet, but it's not on the list. So I picked up one of these to see what it's all about. I remember liking these. Let's pull up the list here really quick before we get too much further. And 58 drinks on the list. And we have, yes, Monster Energy Ultra Violet. Most of them, I feel like most of the Monster Ultra variants are good. I have opened this in such a way that has made my hand wet. It's like a grape. It's like a grape. It's like a very weak grape scent. This just tastes like a grape soda. I'm having a great time over here. This just tastes like a grape soda. You know what's awesome? Grape soda. Damn it. Yeah. This is tasty. I forget how much. What is the? I feel like the caffeine content on a Monster is a little low, if I remember right, but I don't know for sure. I don't know. I can't read any of this. This is all a mess. Yeah, nothing fancy about it. It's not, hitting you over the head with 20 different names of fancy chemicals. It is just, here you go. Grape. Pretty grapey. Any Robitussin flavored energy drinks yet? I mean, no. Probably not. Not that I know of. I don't know. It's been so long since I've tasted Robitussin, I couldn't tell you. Yeah, this is a nice tasting drink. It just tastes like a regular ass grape soda, pretty much. A nice diet grape soda. Yeah, Dimetap would be the right thing to, yes, a nice grape Dimetap. Oh, gosh. We bought like 8 things of Dimetap. I don't know if you know, you might not know this if you don't have kids. I'm not sure, but like there's been a run on children's cold and flu medications this season. And so the shelves have been cleared out because I guess RSV and the flu and COVID and everything coming together has resulted in just a lot of sick kids. And so, people are just like buying in bulk. So my wife was like, this is all they had was a bunch of Dimetap. So I bought a bunch of Dimetap because my daughter has had, I think it's allergies. Honestly, she's had a runny nose for about a week here. And none of the rest of us got it. We were like, oh, we're all going to get sick again. Like, and then no one did, which is interesting and strange. Someone asking if I saw Hard Monster. Yes, everyone has been sending me Hard Monster. I don't know if you know that. Yes, so Monster is bringing out an alcoholic drink. It is 6%, which is fucking weak. But yes, they are bringing out a 6% alcohol drink, and Hard Monster is a very good name. And everyone's like, oh yeah, you got to get your hands on this. And I'm like, yes, I do, but don't be a fool. There's like 0 chance that this is going to have any energy drink in it at all. Because of what happened with Four Loko, the government stepped in and said, hey, we're not going to like necessarily shut you down. We're going to count on you to shut yourself down. So it's not going to have any of the stuff you want in it. It's just going to be like, do you want a Monster flavored drink that is also 6% alcohol? No, I fucking do not. But I will certainly try one if I can get my hands on it. I would give that a go for sure. But yeah, no, people out there going like, oh man, yeah, look at this. It's gonna be, everyone's gonna be vibrating and drunk. It's like, no, you idiots, like stop. Like we went through this before. Like you are misunderstanding the nature of this. Like companies have done this before. In terms of like bringing out an alcoholic version of their energy drink, but it doesn't have any of the energy in it. Like when they did the Hard Mountain Dew, it had no caffeine. So what, at that point, I don't know. I would probably rather just have I would rather have the caffeine. I don't know. It's, I think the lesson there is like, if you want to bring that back, if you want to bring back that era, that glorious, hellish era of the mid 2000s, oh man, then you need to just go back to drinking Red Bull and vodka. That's the only real answer. But yes, they are bringing out a 6% alcohol can of Monster. And I will certainly try it, but it is not, unless something changed, unless they're just like, hey, we're going to try this again because we hate the government. And I'm like, yes. Awesome. I hate the government too. Let's do it. I don't think it's going to go that way. So thank you to everyone that wrote in or sent it in or tweeted pictures of it to me. I am aware, but I can tell you it's not going to be the thing you're looking for. It's not going to be the genuine Monster experience plus alcohol. It's just not. All right, what do we got here? So I'm feeling like this is a pretty good drink. I am going to say it's, where are we going to start here? Where are we going to start here? I'm going to say it's better than Monster Energy Ultra Gold. I would take it over Ghost Cherry Limeade. We're getting into, maybe it is somewhere in this zone. I would take a Rockstar Recovery Orange before I would take a Monster Ultraviolet. That is for sure. Red Bull Sugar Free. It's probably below that. The C4 Smart Energy Black Cherry was okay. That stuff hit me hard when I first got it. I bought a case of that, and around like May or June, or it was probably May, because I had a different job when I bought that case, and I even noticed at some point, like, I am talking a lot in these meetings. Like, yeah, okay. That stuff hit me hard. Over the course of the case of it, it started hitting me a lot less hard. But yeah, the first few days of going through that case was like, Urgh. But flavor wise, it was kind of like a little bit of a mess. It's yeah. But I take ultraviolet. I probably would actually. The Skittles is good though. The C4 Skittles is. Where is this going to go? I think it's going to end up. This is going to be our new number 14. Nope. No, it's going to be our. It's our new number 16. We're going to write it into the master list here. Monster Energy Ultra Violet. And then I will paste it back in here so those of you watching the video can see. It is the 16th best energy drink, beating out Ghost Cherry Limeade and Monster Energy Ultra Gold. Beating out Swedish Fish and Tropical Mango from Ghost. But remember, this is, obviously a lot of different factors play into this. Now, a Ghost Swedish Fish is going to have a lot more of an energy package, an energy load, whatever, than this Monster does. This Monster is not a particularly strong drink, but it does taste great. And so it's kind of a different balance of that. And that matters. If all we cared about was like a low, what does it do to you energy-wise, then, we wouldn't have G Fuel Tetris Blast at the bottom of the list, because generally speaking, all of the G Fuels are pretty potent. So, it's got to be it has to be a mix of those things. It's got to be hey, I can stand some of the chemical flavor as long as it is hitting me hard, but if it goes too far, it becomes undrinkable. And so you need to find a right balance of, it needs to taste good and also needs to wake you up. So that's some of the logic involved in that situation, I suppose. And so there you have it. That's our new number 16 Monster Energy Ultraviolet. Heck of a drink. Why don't we take a break? And we'll come back and we'll talk about some video games. How about that? Okay? Be back in a moment. There's never a bad time to start taking care of your skin. Especially if you are dealing with acne as an adult and, occasional little breakouts here and there. And I know you're thinking like, oh man, I got to go to the store and get, whatever pads to wipe on my face. And that stuff is abrasive. It's the stuff that you thought about using maybe when you were 14 or 15, maybe not the best stuff today. In fact, the best stuff, it's prescription based stuff that they use to deal with all sorts of skin conditions. If you're not happy with wrinkles or acne scarring, or if you're just having breakouts, where are you having them? Your back, your chest, your butt, your face, all these different places. Prescription medication can help. And there's an easy way to get your hands on that prescription medication. It's Apostrophe. Apostrophe is an online platform that connects you with an expert dermatology team to get customized acne treatment for your unique skin. So through Apostrophe, you can get access to oral and topical medications that use clinically proven ingredients to help clear acne. You go online, you fill out a online consultation form, snap a few pictures of the affected areas, and then a board-certified dermatologist will create your initial customized treatment plan. Apostrophe offers access to prescription treatments for all types of acne, whether it's from, hormones or, it's just stuff on your face, your back, if you're having dark spots, different situations, Apostrophe can help. So what are your skincare goals? What are your skincare goals for 2023? Is it to, improve your skin texture and, rid yourself of acne and all that? Well, Apostrophe can help. And it can be easier than getting out and going and seeing a dermatologist, booking an appointment and waiting months to get in there and everything. You can do it online. These board certified dermatologists will look at your case and come up with something that's right for you. And there's a special deal now. Get your first visit for only $5 at apostrophe.com/Jeff when you use the code Jeff. That's a savings of $15 available only to you. To get started, go to apostrophe.com/Jeff and click Get Started. Then use the code Jeff at sign up and you'll get your first visit for only $5. And thanks to Apostrophe for sponsoring the episode. And we're back. Hello. Welcome, everyone. It looks like the heater man going to be here in about half an hour, according to the voicemail I just received from the heater man. So let's talk about some video games. I closed I have a whole thing with like, here's the news for today and here's the other stuff, and I closed it because that's where the energy drinks live as well. I played some Dome Keeper. Dome Keeper has been out for a little bit, but we streamed some of it last week, and then I messed with it a little bit more afterwards. And it's a really great first impression where, so the idea here is that you've got a dome on the surface, and then you have a drill and you can dig down beneath the dome, and as you dig, you will uncover different things. You will find relics. It's a run-based game, so you'll find different things that can upgrade your dome or give you different abilities, or you find resources that you bring back up to the dome to use to buy upgrades. And so you have a limited time where you're underground doing all of this digging, looking for all this stuff, but you have to get it all back up to the dome or get yourself back up to the dome when a timer runs out, because that's when enemies attack the dome. And then from that point, you are moving a little turret on the top of the dome back and forth. There's different upgrades. It's a sword dome. There's different things. But by default, you are moving a little turret back and forth and shooting the enemies out of the air, blasting them on the ground, and basically eliminating a wave of enemies. Then the timer fills back up again, and you go back down underground and do more digging. So that's the back and forth of it. And you have different sizes of worlds and different difficulty settings. And I guess, so I ran one run of it when we were streaming and beat the game and had a successful run my first time out. And that was cool, but also didn't feel great. So I was like, oh, okay, well, the stuff I unlocked or the stuff that I could choose to unlock didn't all immediately sound great. And so it's like a sort of thing where it's like, yes, I could play this again with a bigger world, but I kind of don't know that this is going to have enough variety to warrant further runs. And it does have, there's a different character that works a little differently. There's a sword dome that works differently than the gun dome. And, you have little things like that. But, well, I call them little, but, you have those sorts of situations you can use to change things up. But I guess, there's something about the difficulty balance that just seemed off to me, where upon finishing it, I was like, gosh, I don't know that I want to do this ever again, because we beat it. And it felt like look, there are so many roguelites now, so many different run-based games, and I feel like we've established the standards for the thing that keeps you going is there's 300 things to unlock, and look at all these question marks, and you fill in this, and so this game doesn't really seem to have that, and it seems like it only has a small handful of things, and so it's like, gosh, I don't want to see this unless there's going to be wildly different things every time I run it. And so I ran again, and about halfway through I was like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm good. And it's a shame because so Dome Keeper, it's got a great look to it. It's got a really awesome soundtrack. The mechanics of it are really solid. The feel of digging through the dirt is great. You upgrade your drill and you can dig faster and you can move faster and carry more resources up. Like, all the upgrades feel meaningful, but it just didn't feel like there was enough variety in the action to warrant multiple runs. You know what I mean? And I think that's because a lot of these other games have been, again, you go look at like I'm not a fan of it, but I think it's one of the games that influenced this style. But you look at something like a Binding of Isaac, where it's just like, here's hundreds of different traits that you might encounter over the course of a run, and Dome Keeper just kind of doesn't seem to be doing that. I say seem to be because, like, there's always, I just dug the wrong way. I didn't find these other, but like, generally speaking, I'm just not finding enough different stuff that makes these runs feel great. And so after beating it once, doing another couple of runs, like fiddling with it here and there a little bit, it feels like a game that just needs a lot more to it. It's not in early access, but it feels like a game where you look at it and go, the core of this is awesome. It just needs to be blown out every which way. And so they are still working on it. They're going to add multiplayer, which would be, I think that would be a really cool thing to have. And we'll see what else they do to it. I guess like it's in a state right now where I look at it and go like, I'm going to keep an eye on this, because I feel like if it had a ton of really cool upgrades in here, like way more than it has, to where it feels like, oh, I got a lucky roll here, I got a lucky this roll, this good, like I would feel a lot more interested in it, and I would probably play a whole heck of a lot more of it. But until, and I don't know if it'll get there. I don't know what their roadmap is. Like I said, they're adding multiplayer, which is a very complicated thing to integrate, I'm sure. And we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, give Dome Keeper a look. But I have trouble just straight up recommending it, because it's just kind of needs a little more. An exciting week for fans of kind of let's say the second or third row of Neo Geo games back from the big franchises. Breakers Collection came out. This collects Breakers and Breakers Revenge, which is not that different from Breakers, into one collection. That's out on console, it's out on PC, and it's so these are fighting games. And they're very straightforward fighting games. It is, you're building meters so you have supers. Here, hey, this guy is Ryu. This guy, you don't jump in at the enemy because they will do this move to you over and over again. It is just a bone stock fighting game in a lot of different ways. Decent characters. It plays fine. It's fun, but it is definitely not as differentiated or as much of a standout as like a King of Fighters or a Samurai Showdown or a Last Blade, or in terms of its place in the pantheon of fighting franchises on the Neo Geo. It's low tier, but that's not to say it's a bad game. It's just not freaking Mark of the Wolves or Double Dragon. No, but it is somewhere in that Double Dragon zone of games, I think. But it's fine. It's a good game. Anyway, all that is to say that this collection of it's weird to call it a collection. It's two games, and they're both Breakers, but it is really well made. There are a lot of features here that so many other collections or emulated fighting games like don't get this level. We just saw the Rumblefish 2 come out recently, missing like a bunch of key features that a home fighting game should have, that an online fighting game should have, lobbies, all that, Breakers has lobbies, it's got rollback, it's got ranked and unranked, it has titles, so it's got like player cards, it has crossplay. Like, it really feels like the developers really care about Breakers. So they created all of the kind of modern systems around it that you would need to be able to enjoy a fighting game online in this day and age. And no one is playing it. So, or at least when I was playing it, I was matching up with the 20-ish players that were online, and they were all somewhere else in the world. So I got a lot of bad like bad net play matches that were full of rollback and really crazy. But, you'd find a couple that were had pings of 180 that still felt very playable and didn't have a lot of visible rollback. I was very surprised by how much work they did to bring the Breakers experience to the masses. It's not a franchise I would have expected. I would have thought that this would have just been something that they fart out and just go like, oh, no, it doesn't even, I'm one of those things where you're like, oh, no, this doesn't have netcode. No, why would we? No, come on. It's Breakers. We're fine. King of Fighters games have been sold digitally without any online play at all. Why would you think Breakers would have? But no, they really went the extra mile with it. And it plays fine. Again, I don't think Breakers is like a hardcore banger of a fighting game. You could do a lot better. But it's perfectly serviceable action. I think it's fun. It is just a very standard game from an era when those games were very standard. It's $20, which I think if you're looking for oh man, if you're looking at it as a collection, that's probably a bad value because they're there are only 2 games in here and they're basically identical to each other. Like Breakers Revenge really in some ways feels more like a Champion Edition kind of vibe of we made some changes to Breakers and put it back out again, but from a hey, this game is very playable in a modern context and it's got all the netcode and stuff that you would want to do to play a fighting game online. They did that, and that's pretty awesome. And that feels like the absolute bare minimum. It feels like a game made by people that realize, hey, these games are on Fightcade, so we should probably at least do what they're doing netcode wise and lobby wise. We should at least have that, right? But then they have crossplay, so console players can get in on the act and everything. So it's cool. It's kind of a recommendation with a little bit of caveats there because it's the Breakers. I don't know that I love. There are people that love Breakers, I'm sure, but it's totally fine. It's a cool fighting game. It is not going to knock your socks off as a fighting game. You're like, this is fun. These characters are kind of cool and weird in some cases, and that's great. But it's not it ain't no Mark of the Wolves, all right? But what they did around the edges to make it playable, and what they did to add ranked and unranked and lobbies and titles and the ranking systems and everything there is shocking and surprising to me. So I think that's pretty cool that they did that. So, give that a look. The other game I have been sinking a lot of time into, as I said earlier, I've kind of I'm taking a break from Call of Duty for at least a little bit here. Probably the rest of this month. People were saying that it seems likely that season 2 will be starting in a few weeks here. And so I have been playing Phantasy Star Online 2, New Genesis. I have fallen back into, let me find the name of the developer of Breakers Collection. That's a good point. I do want to shout them out because they've done, it's Qbyte Interactive, which I believe it's a Brazilian team. That's Qubyte Interactive. So they put that out. It's well made. Anyway, yes, I fell back into Phantasy Star Online 2. I thought hey man, I'm gonna let's stream some PSO2. It's been a long time since I have played any of it. So I streamed a few hours of that, and some folks in chat helped me kind of get where I needed to get, because that game has weird roadblocks in it where you just need to you need to have a higher power level before the next quest will unlock. And so that means you need to go make sure that your gear has been upgraded. You need to be the right character level. Like, all of these things feed into your overall power number. And so in the past, that had been something that, broke me for hours of like, oh God, I got to figure out what the heck, what do I need to do this? I have to now engage with all of these weapon tweaking systems that are in a lot of cases very poorly described, to get this number higher, and what do I need to do? And so I hit one of those, and made it through that, and got to this snowy area that was not in the game the last time I played it, and did a whole quest there. That game is still that game in terms of how it plays and how the gun shoots, and the gameplay actions at your disposal. You're still scattering enemies to the four corners by holding down the fire button and blowing them up. And but at the time, when I played through that game when they first launched New Genesis, which, if you haven't been following PSO2, which I would be shocked, they released PSO2, I don't know, like a decade ago, like longer than that even at this point. It released in Japan. It was over there for years and years and years. It finally came over here, and got an English version. Despite them initially announcing it for English release back then, it didn't happen for whatever reason, for monetary reasons. I think they just thought it would not work in this region, so they were like, whatever. And so that game just existed in Japan. I played the Japanese version for a very long time. I played the Japanese version on console when they released it. Anyway, so that was PSO2. It finally came out in the States, and then they were like, oh, by the way, coming soon is PSO2 New Genesis, and it's a total new, it's a new video game. Your character will come in from regular PSO2, but you launch it separately. You download both and then launch it separately. And so it is a completely different game with a completely different look and feel. Feel especially so, like in terms of how the combat acts and how you upgrade your items and everything is dramatically different than it was in the initial PSO2. Some would say significantly worse in a variety of ways. It's just different. And as someone who has played PSO a very specific type of way over the years, that's not really... It used to have timing-based combat, where you would put together your 3-hit combo, and so you would go like light, heavy, but it would behoove you to hit the buttons at the right time. It's not just, you don't just mash out light, heavy like it was fucking Bayonetta or something. And so it has a very deliberate feel to it, and it always has. And for New Genesis, they're like, hey man, you got a gun? Hold down this button. It will shoot forever. And I'm like, what? You broke the game. But, it's just a very different thing when it comes to that specific element that has been pretty core to the experience up to this point. And so that was an interesting change that I have. It's fine, because every other game is just hold down the button, it'll shoot us. So it's like, all right, yeah, I get it. And you have different abilities. You can change classes. So obviously there's, you got your swords, you got your jet boots, you got your guns, you got your rocket launchers, whatever. But it's a free-to-play game, and so they have layered in a bunch of insanity where it's like, you can be a premium user for 15 days if you buy this and do, and so you have like a subscription that it can expire, that does things like, it's mostly convenience related, where it's like you can accept twice as many quests if you're a premium person, or you can hold more items in storage if you're a premium person. You can run your own personal shop and sell items to people if you have an active premium subscription. And so that stuff adds up at a certain point where you're just like, man, this is a hassle. Like the things that get disabled when you are not paying them make that game significantly more of a hassle to play. but it looks outstanding. I love the visual style of it. It is a big fashion type of multiplayer game where people are out there getting their cosmetics and showing them off. I have had a giant Sega Saturn for a head and a floating Dreamcast next to me for the duration of all of this, and that's been great. But it's hard. This is a very hard game to recommend. I like it a lot. I would also say that every single cutscene in it is awful. And every time they try to lay any kind of story on you, it is the dumbest thing they could have come up with. And you just sit there and watch these anime style cutscenes play out in the slowest, most stilted ways possible. And you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to skip this thing so I can get back to holding down this button to make these enemies blow up. And hope that I get rare drops. And so it is like I said, it's a hard game to recommend. A lot of the systems in it are so you are feeding guns to your guns to level up your guns in a lot of cases. You want to, I want this gun to be +5. I want it to be +40. That is you then taking a bunch of other items and feeding it into the gun to level up the gun. And then there's a bunch of weird stuff like, you can multi-class the weapon, which I don't understand that at all. You can add different, basically, stats and bonuses to the guns with these different items. And sometimes you can try to add a stat to a weapon and it will fail. So they have a different class of item in there that's like, hey, if you use this item, which might be kind of rare, it'll make it 20% more likely to be successful. You're like, that's annoying, but yeah, I get it. The game is a mess, and I love it. And it is the most turn down your sound and listen to a podcast game I have ever played. Because the story is just straight up terrible. So it was just like, oh my God, I want to actively avoid some of this stuff, but I can't get away from Phantasy Star Online, and I can't get away from Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. And it's I think it's because of how much of the original PSO that I played that I want this game to be more than it is. Honestly, it is a game with a ton of issues, like in terms of how it's structured, and where they try to get you for money, and I think a lot of that stuff is frustratingly developed, and a lot of it is done deliberately, But yeah, I got to go answer the door. So this is that extended break I was talking about at the top of the show. I will be right back in a little bit. I got to show this guy in and show him where the broken stuff is. So hold tight. Okay, we're back. I described the situation to the heater repair guy, and he's like, oh, okay, yeah. So he's going to take a look at that, and we'll see what the heck is up with the heater. Anyway, long story short, Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis is a game that I have decided to keep installed. I think this is what happened. So I'm running out of space on my D drive, which is where all my Steam games go. And that's a 1 terabyte SSD, I believe. Let's check. Yeah. And PSO 2 is a 100 gigabyte install. And that's big. And I am tired of having to negotiate with my hard drive every time I want to install a new game. So, yeah. So I was like, well, I haven't played this in months. Am I gonna do this? Am I gonna keep this installed? And I played it, and I was like, Yep, I am. The 2 100 gig games I have installed are that and Destiny 2. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But what I did do is I uninstalled the Steam version and then installed the Xbox, the PC, the Xbox store, the Windows Store version, because that has to go on the C drive. And I've got a lot of space on my C drive. That's a 2 terabyte SSD. It's typically where I keep my apps. But I'm like, yeah, I'll just throw that over there. And then now I can keep it installed and do this. I need to get it up and running on the Steam Deck. That's actually where I want to play that game. And that's been a fantastic, that seems like it would be a fantastic place to play that game. Except for sometimes, well, actually, now that I think about it, so it like an MMO, you are equipping items to your number keys, and so like you can put whatever you want wherever you want, and so I have the 1 key is a heal, and the 3 key is my blight rounds, and so on and so forth. So sometimes, you can navigate with that with a gamepad, but it's a lot easier to play that game if you happen to have a keyboard right in front of you. And so, I guess I could use the back paddles to... Actually, yeah, that's a good point. You could use the back paddles on the Steam Deck to map to some of those things and do it that way. Overminty says, Xbox game app on PC lets you choose your drive now. Not every game supports that. So in this specific case, it was like, hey, this game needs to be on the C drive. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good because that's where I want to put it anyway. So fine. Yeah, it's hey, it's free. You could play it. You could. I don't know. Bryn is in the chat. Bryn, should people play Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis if they haven't played any of this stuff before? I can't tell anymore. I've lost all perspective on this game because of my lengthy history with the franchise. Is it bad to recommend this to people? You can't tell either? Yeah. All right. Yeah. If you're a specific type of lunatic, this is going to be a great game for you. But gosh, I don't know. It's I like the look of it a lot, but yeah, it's maybe a difficult game to recommend because it is, especially if you're thinking about like free to play MMO style role playing games. Like there's other stuff you could be playing that that I think would. Not that it's necessary, not that it's a free-to-play game per se, but like, the Destiny 2 stuff, like you should be playing Destiny. You should be playing should you be playing that's another one. Should you play Warframe instead of PSO? Because I've also been playing some Warframe a little bit here and there, and my answer is no. I would take PSO over Warframe, but there's a lot in Warframe. So, I understand this. I understand how people could get way into Warframe. And I understand how people could sink like 8 trillion hours into Warframe and just be into that specific thing as far as a free-to-play role-playing game type of thing is, there are constantly blueprints you could be researching or whatever the fuck it is you do in Warframe. I don't know. I have played a few dozen hours of Warframe and I have no idea what the hell you do in Warframe. At this point, I never will. Unless they make some changes to that game, I am convinced I will never truly know what's going on in Warframe. Mindbullet asks PSO2 or Genshin Impact. I think Genshin Impact is a cool game in a lot of ways. I have not played it in a very long time, and I don't know that I will go back to it. I had a really good time with it when I was playing it. I was like, this is really cool. And then like the content started to wear a little bit thin. And the monetization, like I kind of don't want to play a gacha game. I kind of like that style of monetization just doesn't hold me for long, and it feels actively abrasive in some ways where you're like, oh, if I save up enough currency, I can get 10 pulls for free because I don't want to spend any money on this thing. But then you're thinking about ways to do that, and it just changes the way that you play the game. But it was a very well made thing when I played it. I know they've added a lot to it since because I stopped playing Genshin Impact before their first really big content update even hit. And I think what I wanted to do is I wanted to merge my accounts between, so you're by default your PC and your phone Genshin Impact accounts work in conjunction, but the PlayStation account was separate and you could not have your progress on all platforms. They have changed that, but when I went to go look at what you needed to do for that, you had to email them and go through some customer support process. And so I started going through that process, and then they never emailed me back, and I couldn't get it working. And I was like, I'll forget it. And then I uninstalled Genshin Impact across all platforms, and that was that. So yeah, I think that was the thing that finally shook me loose. There was not having all of the progress be the same on all platforms. So I think that's what it was. When the PlayStation 5 came out and they put out a PS5 version of Genshin Impact, I was like, oh, I want to see what this game looks like on a PS5, because it looked a little grimy before. Like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe this will run better, right? Because they did a PS4 and then they put out a PS5 version, right? I'm not crazy, right? Anyway, went through that process and did not come out the other end of it successfully. So I was like, forget it. Anyway, that's it for video games. They're done. We're done with them. Instead, let's talk about some news. Okay. Ubisoft is in the news a bit here. We talked about this a little bit on Friday when it kind of was happening. But Ubisoft has canceled some more video games, and stop me if you're surprised here, but they have delayed Skull and Bones yet again. That's right. Skull and Bones, the game that was never going to come out anyway, has somehow been pushed yet again. Anyway, let's dive into it a little bit. There's kind of a variety of news here. I'm looking at Video Games Chronicle and Kotaku and Eurogamer's reporting on some of this stuff. They issued a financial update on Wednesday, and basically that update was like, "Hey, this is it has not been great." They described it as facing major challenges, and as part of this call, they canceled 3 games. These were unannounced games. So that means if you've heard of it, it's technically, well, that's not true, because I think they had some leaks, right? So we don't know what these games are that were unannounced. Presumably they were very early to a point where that made a lot of sense for them to cancel them. But think about it. Like, what's going on with X-Defiant? Whatever. We're going to look that up, because that game had its own website and everything. They ran beta tests and what is the latest news on the X-Defiant website? Insider sessions, register now. Oh, they're just calling it X-Defiant. It's no longer like Tom Clancy's X-Defiant, I guess. Register for updates and a chance to play early. Session notes from August 26th, 2022 is the last news post on the X-Defiant website, which I feel like that was... Oh, no, wait, no, there's some from October. This website is just not well made. So, October 19th and 20th, session notes. Read here about the latest changes. This week, new game modes: Domination, Occupy, Escort, and Zone Control. New maps. This week's focus: General. Example questions: how are you liking X-Defiant in its current state? Have you enjoyed the changes throughout Insider sessions? What other changes would you like to see? What do you think of Attica Heights? Patch notes: El Fumigador is now known as El Remedio. Okay. So yeah, it looks like they're still doing like session-based testing for that, or at least they were in October, which is the last update we've got here. And you can register for their sessions, and and everything. So I don't know. They are still taking registrations. I don't know if you can sign up to play X Defiant. X Defiant, if you don't remember, it's their shooter. It's this Ubisoft shooter. You know, the one. That seems like Call of Duty plus graffiti. It has a really weird. I watched a chunk of gameplay a while ago now, so who knows how much that thing looks like these days. But it had a, again, it seemed like their attempt to try to make a fast action shooter that was not a tactical Clancy thing. And it just seemed like they were like, hey, what if we made a Call of Duty kind of thing? That seems like something that people might want more of. And I wonder if they're now like, I wonder how they feel about it now. Like in a situation where Call of Duty potentially becomes Microsoft owned, are they like, oh, that's going to lead to more room for games like ours, which I don't know that it necessarily does. Or are they like, oh man, Call of Duty came out and was really well received this year, we're fucked. Like I wonder what the vibe is there in terms of how they view the competitive landscape for a game like X Defiant. Because I will say it looks a little bland. Or it looked a little bland when I saw footage of it a while ago. Anyway, presumably that is not one of the games we're talking about here, because again, the news is that Ubisoft has canceled 3 unannounced games, and that they say that they are facing major challenges as the industry continues to shift towards mega brands, which led to a really good piece of this. So they I guess the game Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope, the follow-up to the other Mario and Rabbids game, they are saying it underperformed in the final weeks of 2022 and early January. They're saying this despite excellent ratings and players' reception, as well as an ambitious marketing plan, that they were caught off guard by the low sales of it. They say ambitious marketing plan. That marketing plan, I feel like, missed me completely. And I also, in talking about the game, in talking about Sparks of Hope and mentioning this online, I feel like a lot of the reaction I saw from people were like, oh, right, that game. Like people had forgotten that it had come out completely. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, they did put out another one of those. Huh. Yeah. Like this game, I don't know if it just shipped into a different competitive landscape or what the deal was, but I will say that like when Sparks of Hope came out, no, I did not see a lot of talk about it at all. It felt like there was like zero buzz, zero word of mouth. People were like excited because every time you talked about it, they were like, but the reaction was always, oh man, I loved that first game. But it sounds like that didn't necessarily translate into, and I would like to play it again. And I will say that's probably where I'm at with it, where I thought that first game was awesome. But I don't know that I want to play another one of those. Like it was good. It was surprising, right? Maybe that's the problem, and maybe that's why they are caught off guard by its lack of sales. But like I look at that and go, okay, this game was part of the reason why that game was so awesome the first time out is because of how inventive and surprising it was. And that helped with, I think, get a lot of people to play a turn-based tactics game that maybe would not have otherwise. But when you do a sequel to it, even though it's not a one-to-one exact same game, I think it's very easy for people to be like, I really liked that game, but I don't know that I need to play another one of those. And I think that's where I was, but I think that's where I suspect that's where a lot of people were. But the Yves Guillemot gave a kind of his reaction to this, I think, is a little weird here. The quote that Video Games Chronicles pulled here is, when there's more pressure, people go for the biggest brands and they don't go for the small ones. What we have observed is that there has been some contraction in overall consumer spending coming from the economic environment and rising inflation. As you mentioned, that has led to the biggest mega brands and live services taking a larger share of the market, leaving less available consumer spending for other launches. That's the clear conclusion that we've taken. We've seen that there are other games of high quality that have underperformed. Like, look, I think there's probably some truth to that people go with what they know in a live service game that they're already playing and can continue to just keep playing. Sure, maybe they could keep doing that. Also, saying people go for the biggest brands and they don't go for the small ones when your game has fucking Mario in it. Come on. Like, you've got the cast of Nintendo characters and you've got the Rabbids, which are not exactly a slouch in terms of, like, what they have done over the years, the Rabbids games. And, it's not like I will grant you, Mario and Rabbids is a sub-brand and it's a whole thing. Like, yes, what he's saying here, like, okay, yeah, it's not. But look, there's a lot of. It just strikes me as that's a certain type of bullshit, and I really appreciate the spin there. But the other side of that is your game has Mario in it. You have decades of marketing to play off of. You have, like, if you had more effective marketing that maybe reached more players. I feel like the thing I'm seeing now in these chats as we're talking about this game is people going like, oh, right, that came out. So clearly the marketing was not super effective at reaching the gaming audience. So I don't know who they were trying to reach and if they reached them or what the deal was. I don't know how they marketed it. But it seems like there was just a lack of awareness around it. And so, yes, it's launching into a competitive landscape and there's this and that, but like also, what is it competing with on the Switch? It's not like there's a ton of big first-party Nintendo games coming out that are knocking it off shelves and knocking it out of shopping carts. Like, Switch had a pretty slow year overall. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe this is also a further compounded by, like, yeah, there's a lot of people that just don't buy a lot of big third-party games on Switch because they buy first-party games and they buy indie games, and that's it. I could see that maybe being a thing. But, like, the idea that, like, oh, they don't go for these small brands, like, dog. Like, if I were Nintendo, I would be like, oh, we're just a small, we're just a small brand, huh? If I were in third party at Nintendo, I would be like picking up the phone and be like, so we're just like fuck us, right? Like, oh, Mario, that fucking little guy. Look at that little guy. Little paisan. Fuck him. Like, yeah, that's us, right? Yeah. Let's see what happens with the third game, huh? It's it's really it's just it's a very interesting statement. I just found it hilarious. Even though I will admit, like, Mario and Rabbids is not Mario, but also it's still got Mario in it at a time when a movie is coming up, at a time when interest in Mario seems like it is on the rise again because of the film, because, it seems like that maybe they could have done a little bit better. Maybe they should have shipped it at a different time. Maybe they shipped it around the same time as the movie. If Nintendo would have allowed that, maybe they want a clear lane for marketing the movie. They don't want it to muddy it up, but, maybe there'd be a better thing there. But, like, yeah, I don't know. That just strikes me as crazy. But also at the same time, no matter how they marketed that game, at the same time, there's an aspect of me that's like, I enjoyed that game the first time, and I'm not sure that I want to necessarily devote a bunch of time to another one of those. So, I could see that being more of an issue. But seeing a bunch of people going like oh, they didn't even know that it had come out, or they like, oh, right, that game, had already completely forgotten about it. Like, clearly the marketing, well, I don't know, maybe our sample size is not big enough, but like demographically, but like I feel like the marketing maybe didn't hit the target, but what the fuck do I know? So yes, in addition to that, they have delayed Skull and Bones a little bit. And so now they are saying it will arrive early in the next fiscal year, which means after April, or rather in April. Sorry. Early in the next fiscal year is open to interpretation. The fiscal year begins in April. So that means it will not ship until at least April. Initially, they wanted it out in March, which would have put it in their previous fiscal year. And now they're pushing it out of this fiscal into next, which is usually not a good thing. But maybe they're just writing off this year completely and we're like, oh, fuck it, man. Let's try again next year. I feel like Ubisoft has had a really rotten run here this past couple of years. Like, like let's look this up, because this is what I looked up the Ubisoft games that shipped in 2022, and it was not a big. They just did not have a big year, and I think that there's probably a lot of good reasons for that. Whether it's, hey, development impacted by the pandemic, or like, hey, a lot of the senior management at your company is not acting fast enough about the harassment and some of the other issues that company. So, there's been people leaving the company because of the internal culture being bad, and so on and so forth. I think that there are a lot of different things at play here that probably do have some sort of impact. But like, let's just walk through Ubisoft's 2022. Calendar 2022. In January, they had Rainbow Six Extraction, a game that some people tried to defend when it came out, and as every time I played it, it was like, why did this happen? A game that feels like it was very quickly launched and forgotten about, but also when it was announced, it seemed like a game that was like, oh man, this doesn't seem like it's a thing that, like, this is not something that's going to satisfy Siege fans. This doesn't seem like it's going to satisfy anyone that is looking for a tactical shooter of any kind. Like, it's just, that game feels like it very much came and went. It felt competent to me. It was like, okay, yeah, like there's aspects of this that make sense, but like, Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection on Switch, which, all right, yeah, that came out in February. Far Cry Primal came out on Stadia in May. Huh? Roller Champions also came out in May. Remember Roller Champions? That was the kind of sportsy roller derby-ish, not roller derby-ish, but like roller skatesy thing. It is not Roller Drome, which is the game you're probably thinking of. That was the stylish kind of single player guns and tricks kind of thing. It's a competitive game that I did not find any other players playing when I went to go play it, and so never really got past the tutorial. It had a look to it. I remember at the time going like, oh, this could be something, but that Discovery Tour Viking Age, the thing that they added on to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that came out on Stadia in June. So they had Stadia releases. Maybe that's not a great. Roller Champions came to the Switch in June. Rabbids Party of Legends. Wait, really? What is that? In June, they put out something called Rabbids Party of Legends on PC, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Stadia. Did they put out a Rabbids game in 2022? They did. I assume by including the word party in there that it is a Mario Party, like a mini game collection of sorts. It has to be, right? Dude, is this one of those situations where someone made up a fake game on Wikipedia and because I guess I was gonna type it into Steam because I have Steam up here, but I guess like that's not. It's not going to be on Steam. They've only just started. Okay, I'm typing Rabbids. This isn't real. Apparently, it's real. Apparently, this is an actual. Okay, all right, yeah. Apparently, they put this game out. The Rabbids are back with a new party game that takes multiplayer mayhem to mythical levels for the whole family. Join them on a hilarious journey full of chaos and colorful characters across 50 ridiculously fun mini-games. And it looks like a Mario Party. I don't know. Well, I don't know if it has a board game motif or if it's just... Yeah, June 30th. Weird. I wonder how that did for them. Okay, let's keep looking here. Yeah, I don't it seems like they were, man, I wonder if they were really caught off guard, or how off guard they were caught by the Stadia announcement. Because they put Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon Classic Edition out on Stadia in July. Which maybe, like, this seems like them putting a lot of old games onto Stadia. So maybe this was them going like, all right, we said we're going to support this thing. We're going to put these things out. So here you go. Valiant Hearts: The Great War appeared on Stadia in July. And then Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope hit the Switch in October. I've got a knock at my door. I'm going to go check on that and see what's going on. Okay, we're back. So, yeah, it's he changed the filter, which I thought I had changed the filter pretty recently, but when I saw him walking it out, it was pretty filthy. So maybe the filter gets dirtier faster than I thought here. Then he cleaned the flame igniter head thing, which was a little dirty. And said our gas pressure was a little high. So made some adjustments. Hopefully that'll make it work. Hopefully the heater will work now. And yeah, I don't know. It was only happening at night, or rather, it would only happen after it had been off for a number of hours. So like it wouldn't come on during the day because you don't really need the heat during the day. And so when evening would come around and the heat would kick on for the first time, then it would sit there and go like 15 times in a row before it would finally catch and kick on. So anyway, problem solved, hopefully, but we won't know until tonight or tomorrow or something. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, back to Ubisoft. So, yeah, Mario and Rabbids came out October 20th. Which, I guess, actually, since I'm looking at this list, we can figure out, like, what else came out. And did any other stuff come out in October that overshadowed its release? That's the same day Vampire Survivors released, so I see why. Oh, this is also the same week that Gotham Knights came out, which that feels like the game that was occupying most of the conversation that week, for better or worse. Yeah. It's not too long before Bayonetta came out, so in Bayonetta, you've got another big Switch game coming along. I don't know. Just Dance 2023 came out in November on Switch, PS5, and Xbox Series X. And that's it. So think about that. Like, that's a year for Ubisoft where they had zero of their like tentpole releases that you usually associate with the company. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? Because I think that they have burned up those tent poles by releasing them too long without changing enough. Far Cry 6 was probably the last one of those they put out, right? The last like kind of big, and that was October 2021. But yeah, we haven't had a new Assassin's Creed. There was no new Far Cry this year, thankfully. And so, yeah, I look at it as like, okay, yeah, I'm sure Rabbids, Mario and Rabbids didn't sell what they wanted it to sell based on what the previous one sold and what they thought it was going to do, and so on and so forth. But also, like, look at this year for them, where like at some point, like even take into account, like at some point they thought they were going to have Skull and Bones. That would not have changed the year for them dramatically. I don't like, that's got to be and I think people working on the game have kind of like said as much to, I want to say it was Kotaku, but I don't know. I remember seeing in the reporting someone had said like, yeah, Skull and Bones is eventually going to come out, but it's not like it's going to be some gigantic mega video. You know, it's not going to sell Assassin's Creed numbers. It's not going to, and so even if Skull and Bones had hit last year, like Ubisoft they didn't have the games in 2022. They just didn't. So, you know, you can pick apart the reasons for that, and I think part of it probably is that, You know, there are people that left that company that did not like the culture and did not think that they were fixing the culture, even despite saying that they were going to. Or that they didn't move fast enough in some cases. I've heard a variety of things from folks around that, I guess, over the years here. But yeah, man, it's a Ubisoft feels like they have fallen off some kind of track, and they probably need to, right? Because I think Assassins needs a bigger rethink, and it sounds like they're finally making a smaller one, and they're trying to do different stuff. I don't know that any of the Assassin's Creed announcements that they've made feel dramatic enough for what I wish that they were doing, but we'll see how those games end up hitting, right? I feel like Far Cry is just done. I was someone who enjoyed the early parts of Far Cry 6 more than most people that I knew. But eventually realized, like, oh man, this is just the same goddamn thing again. Like, I super don't want to do this again. And fell off of it. And so I feel like Far Cry is in need of a really big rethink as well. For as much as they are trying to, expand and rethink what they can do with Assassin's Creed to continue to make it matter, I think Far Cry is in need of that. And I think Watch Dogs, like, if we think about what is the other big Ubisoft franchise, single player franchise, I guess I would say Watch Dogs is probably it. And I don't think Legion was kind of a bummer. I don't think that game capitalized on the cool sounding things that they had done with it. And so I don't know what you do with that. If you do more Watch Dogs, or if you kind of walk away from it at this point. And so what is Ubisoft? They're Siege. They're the Siege Corporation. They're the Rainbow Six Siege Corporation, right? That's all they've got, which is better than nothing, honestly. I mean, that's a game that, despite, I was always surprised at how well that game did, but it seems like people are still very much enjoying it. We'll see if it's fixed or not. I don't know. Right? I mean, it works now, but it always worked during the day. So we'll see tonight if it works. Yeah, he cleaned some stuff. I'll tell you about it later. Yeah. It's going all right. I don't know. We're talking about Ubisoft and how they seem kind of fucked. Yeah. Yeah, they're no one wants their games anymore. Because they're boring. Yeah, but like, they put out 1 billion of them in a row. You wouldn't, if you had played all of them, believe me, you probably wouldn't like them anymore. Yeah, I'll take the kids away so you can play the 200 hours of Assassin's Creed. Sorry, my wife was there, and the window is open. So, yeah. So I just, yeah, there's going to be more stuff with the Division, right? So the thing, so they announced all this stuff, and then the next day put the Division 2 on Steam. Like, they're like, oh shit. Here. And so it makes sense when you see them slowly putting more and more games back on Steam, that they're very much going to be like, okay, we need to make sure these games are getting in front of people and making sure that people are playing them, and having our own store is not going to be enough for that. So, so it was funny to see Division 2 hit immediately following these announcements. But I guess people were mad there because they didn't take the time to integrate Steam achievements and stuff like that. So it feels like it feels slapdash. It feels like, oh my God, fuck, get this thing on Steam quick. So hopefully they do right by that. Because I love the Division. Speaking as someone who did not play that much of the Division 2, I really enjoyed the Division 1 and thought Division 2 was maybe a little too much of the same, but still really appreciate the concept. I think it occupies a very similar, a similar space as like a Destiny and those sorts of games, as a Phantasy Star Online 2, but it has a very different vibe to it, and I think it feels good. And when the Division is on point, it is really awesome. And And so I want to see them do more with the Division. And I know that they tried to they were like, we're doing this free to play thing, and we're doing this, and just like they've been making announcements in that space that have just pissed people off. Obviously, the last like Breakpoint or whatever the last Ghost Recon was didn't really do it. Someone somewhere is still working on updates for the Crew 2, so presumably they will make the Crew 3 someday, I guess. But I guess that's probably what Ubisoft needs to do, right? Is they probably need a full-on Division sequel at some point. And I'm saying this without knowing sales figures on any of this, but to me, the Division is a franchise that feels like it needs to continue. And when you look at other competitive games in there, like a Destiny, like a Warframe, I think you could make a case for like, hey, we're gonna maybe you don't do the Division 3 as a free to play game, but maybe you do it as we're gonna sell this at $60, but it's headed in that direction. You're not gonna pay, if you wait a handful of months, you're not gonna pay more than $30 for the full Division 3 experience. And so we're getting as many people in the door as we need to, and then maybe eventually it has, it's free to own this weekend, or whatever, to get people in the door and get them, turning cranks on battle passes and whatever else you have, season-based content. Like I feel like they could do more of that stuff and probably do well with it. There's the Splinter Cell thing. They announced a Prince of Persia. So like, again, those are games that have been announced, so they're not in this list of 3 unannounced games that were canceled. Presumably, Splinter Cell is still going. They probably issued something on that. They did go ahead and say, after they were asked directly, hey, what's up with Beyond Good and Evil 2? Is that still running? Because obviously Michel Ancel left the company, and at the time, that was, I think, the last update they gave on the game was when he left. They were like, we're still working on it. And yep, they are still working on Beyond Good and Evil 2. It is still in development. What is the actual quote here? Eurogamer has the quote here. Beyond Good and Evil 2's development is underway, and the team is hard at work to deliver on its ambitious promise. They also note that was, remember, it was E3 2017 when they got out there and said, take a look at Beyond Good and Evil 2. And it has been over 15 years since that game was announced. That doesn't mean that a team has been in full production on that game for 15 years. It sounds like it's been really kind of start and stop-ish over that time. So I don't know what the deal. So Eurogamer does say in August of last year, that was the last public update on development. Former Blizzard narrative designer Sarah Arellano, tripping over my own tongue here, joined the project as its lead writer. So that was August of last year was the last like public thing they had said about it, was someone joining that team. And I don't know, like this whole thing that Ubisoft seems to be doing now, and Skull and Bones obviously pales in comparison to this development cycle. But this thing where they just keep funding these games in development for a very long time, and then they come out and who cares? That's harsh. I like Skull and Bones sounds potentially interesting, but it sounds like it is going to be a game. Like to me, that always sounded like it was going to be the game the size of For Honor or something. It's like, hey, we're making a multiplayer take on pirate boat stuff. And just like you like that stuff in Assassin's Creed, right? And you're like, yeah, I guess. Like, yeah, well, we're going to make an esports game out of that. I'm like, no, you're not. I mean, you're gonna, but like, it's not. No, come on. And that game will probably come out and be fine for a certain group of people that want to do pirate ship combat. That's, to me, a part of a much larger game. I don't know that I necessarily want a game that focuses on that specific element. Maybe it'll be fun and awesome, and we'll see. But like, even if it is a great representation of pirate ship combat, I don't see a world where that's like a major seller that warrants like the amount of time that has been spent on this thing. I don't think it makes its money back, right? But whatever. I don't know. I know nothing about its budget, so like I can't sit here and say it's not going to make its money back. What the fuck do I know about that aspect of the game, right? So maybe it's still within some parameter there that they're like, we're confident it'll at least make some money back, and whatever. We'll get to it'll get to where it needs to get to for us to not feel like total idiots. But like at the same time, you know, how does that stay? How does that game stay in development? It just seems like bad money after good money, one of those situations. But Beyond Good and Evil 2, gosh, okay. So if you think about Beyond Good and Evil 2 and what they showed and all the stuff with fucking Joseph Gordon-Levitt coming out and saying, you're going to make the game. Submit your work to us on spec and we'll pay you nothing for it unless you win the contest, and then you'll maybe get something and you can have your textures in the game. Like all of that stuff, the backlash around all of that stuff and how gross that all came across for a game that had been in development for like a decade at that point, for them to come out and be like, you're going to help us make it. Do you want to make some cool music for our game? Are you fucking kidding me? So like, if that's the approach, so think about that. That was 2017 when they announced that. Think about where the world was in 2017 and what the hot buzzwordy money making technology thing was then. And like, I was like, oh, we're going to user generated content, blah, blah, blah. Don't you think when you think about Ubisoft's track record with experimentation on this stuff, that now, and maybe we're on the other side of it and it's not that anymore, but at some point, probably around 2020, and this is pure speculation, but if you look at all of the breadcrumbs and stuff around it, this would make a lot of sense. At some point, they totally were like, oh yeah, man, we're going to put fucking hella NFTs in this fucking thing. Your spaceship, your monkey's bandana, all of this stuff, right? Like, oh yeah, no, this is perfect. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, get him on the phone, see what he thinks about the blockchain. And I'm sure if he's already running a company like that, he's probably like, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, sure, let's absolutely do that. Why wouldn't we? In fact, I'm already doing it. And so it's right? I'm not, again, I have not talked to anyone along these lines, but when you think about Ubisoft being a company that experimented with NFTs on Breakpoint, a game that they already had written off, like, fuck it. Like, let's try it here because no one cares. So we can at least try it here in a live environment and see what happens. That seems like something they would have done at some point. And maybe now they're like, oh, we've got to rip all that stuff out now because people don't want it. Or maybe it'll stay. Yes, actually, that's a good point. Lacuna and Coiled in the chat says Ubisoft is totally going to AI art generate the rest of this game. Yeah, maybe they're on to the next buzzword, and they're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna go get a DALL-E license, and yeah, we're just typing in spaceships. We're typing in monkey spaceship, and there you go. But right, like that almost. It has to be, right? I'm going to say that's one of those situations where I'm going to say I'm probably right here, right? I'm probably right about that they, at some point when they started doing all of their blockchain experimentation and thoughts, they were like, oh, this is going to be perfect for this nightmare game that we have over here. It's going to come out and yeah, you'll have a custom whatever is going to be in that game. So yeah, who knows? I don't know. We will see. You'd like to think that everyone kind of learned better as that whole market, went up in smoke and everything there. But like at the same time, I mean, Square, like that statement from Square at the beginning of the year where they're like, it's been tough times for, digital collectible, or, it's been tough times for blockchain based things. That's why we think it's the right time for us to get in. Like, oh, okay. You're going the other way with it. Nice. So yeah, again, I don't know. I'm just, trying to put two and two together over here, and who knows, but it feels that feels like something they would absolutely do. Is make that a big old blockchain thing. Who knows? They say it's still in development. But gosh, Ubisoft, right? Like what a weird turn that company has taken, if you look at their 2022, it's no wonder why they're coming to this point in the year and giving a financial update that's like, yeah, it's been rough. It's like, yeah, you didn't ship anything. You did not ship any massive games. You did not ship any big releases. Like that's the stuff you're known for, is like, here's a big 100-hour thing. Here's a big 100-hour Assassin's Creed. And I think they need to diversify from that. And I think they need to reinvent those franchises because they've been at it a little too long and people are getting tired of those tricks. But they also didn't ship anything. So yeah. In other news, I guess a bunch of source code for some racing games is being held hostage. Motorsports Games. This is according to Insider Gaming. Motorsports Games, known for making games such as NASCAR Ignition, NASCAR Heat, IndyCar, and KartCraft, is reportedly being held hostage over unpaid wages, and that an employee is threatening to release source code for those 4 games online if the wages are not paid. They've had a lot of funding issues. The entire board of directors left the company. There has been the threat of lawsuits around the unpaid wages. That's even earlier this year. That stuff happened in November. The entire board of directors of this company bailed. Let's see here. In an internal email provided to Insider Gaming, Dmitry Kozko, the CEO of Motorsport Games, told employees that the resignation of the board leaves, quote, our organization in a non-compliant position with NASDAQ. However, there's a 45-day grace period for us to present a plan on how we are able to remedy this, along with the possibility of an additional 180-day extension. And they're doing a 1-for-10 reserve stock split as a result of all of that. And the quote here on this article from November, one employee said on the matter, well, it's just the usual bullshit of everything is fine because he just wants money and has done these things twice before. So, though that NASCAR game, I remember coming out, and I'm not out there following the NASCAR license these days, but I feel like in the last NASCAR game, people were extremely pissed about from a quality perspective, basically saying that Motorsports Games, they went out there and they bought up the rights to leagues and then basically made absolute garbage, and they can't get enough money to make it right, and a bunch of employees have not been paid and a bunch of employees have left. The unpaid wages thing from earlier in January, Insider Gaming says it's understood that around 30 Russian employees at Motorsport Games have not been paid since October. Payment problems first originated in October when Motorsports Games said it could no longer pay its Russian employees due to the war against Ukraine. Motorsports Games proceeded to move its Moscow office to Georgia and offered employees the chance to move. They did not offer any compensation for the move and said employees would have to relocate on their own. In addition, new contracts were offered to those who could move to Georgia, which included reducing wages in comparison with their Russian salaries, which were around 20% less. It's understood that even those who were able to relocate to Georgia are struggling to be paid, some of whom relocated with their families. Yeah, their reputation is bad and getting worse as time goes on. Robot in the chat says there was also a situation over the weekend where an event that they have an exclusive license to crashed multiple times. Yeah. Motorsports Games in general has an awful reputation in sim racing, and it only gets worse over time. Yeah, so, you know, they went out there and they snapped up all these licenses. Like, it sounds like they just got a bunch of money, got the licenses with the money, and then had none left over to make good games, which is not unheard of in the video game space for sure. But to do it with this many times and then to fall on the worst times and not be able to pay your people, not good. So yeah, the upshot of this recent story is that yes, there's anonymous employees have told Insider Gaming that the company is now essentially being blackmailed to pay unpaid wages, or the source code for 4 games will be released online. And that one employee has directly threatened Motorsports Games CEO and the company's new directors. The employee has demanded that unpaid wages are paid to employees by January 25th, or the source code for all 4 games will be released publicly online. Speaking with other employees not familiar with the situation, it was said they were not surprised that such drastic action was being taken from someone who probably has, quote, nothing to lose. And that, yes, this is following that report saying that employees have not been paid since October and all the relocation stuff. And employees that spoke to Insider Gaming strongly believe that IndyCar is the next game from the company to release, but are strongly anticipating NASCAR 23 to be delayed until 2024. Yeah, no official comment from Motorsport Games on this, but yeah, I don't know. The reporting on this just sounds dire and like it is ratcheting up all of the time. Insider Gaming has a lot of reporting around this, around this studio and the turmoil that's been happening over there for months and months. Sony has announced the top downloads of in the PlayStation Store. Their top downloads of 2022. They've done this for multiple regions and broken it down a number of different ways. In the United States, for the PlayStation 5, the number 1 download. I'm trying to puzzle this out here because they don't say anything about paid versus free. They do have a separate list for free-to-play games, but I assume that means that they are then taken out of... I'm trying to see if there are any free-to-play games in the main list, and I don't think so. So maybe they have split them out, because I would assume that... Anyway. The number 1 most downloaded game in the United States and Canada for PlayStation 5 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, followed by God of War Ragnarok. And then NBA 2K23 coming in at number 4 is Elden Ring. Madden is below that. GTA 5 at number 6. At number 7, we have FIFA. At number 8 is Horizon Forbidden West. At number 9 is Gran Turismo 7. And number 10 is Dying Light 2. They give a top 20 list here. Cyberpunk is in the bottom there. WWE, NBA, Cyberpunk, MLB. Gotham Knights at number 17. And at number 20 is Stray. I'm trying to see here, this is, so let's see. Upgrades not included is what they're saying here. Yeah, number 10 for Dying Light is, I guess, like, mildly surprising for me. That game felt like it had a very slow start compared to... I mean, I think that was the rap with Dying Light 1 in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, man, you really take a long time to get the things you need to get to make this game really feel great and feel fun. And I got to a point where I started piecing it together, and then I just kind of fell off it. I was like, I just don't care about the story or the structure of this game enough to really keep going with it. And Dying Light 2, I feel like I have not heard a ton of discussion around. I know, yeah, Dying Light 1 had a great number of fans. And also, they supported Dying Light 1 for a really long time. And so I wonder if by the time they're done with Dying Light 2, if they end up putting a bunch of additional content into that makes that a much better and more entertaining experience. But Yeah, I don't know. Dying Light 2 just kind of, it seems okay. But like structurally, I found parts of it kind of frustrating and you know, very slow start. In Europe, unsurprisingly, the number one PlayStation 5 game is FIFA 23 at number 1, Call of Duty at number 2, God of War, then Elden Ring at number 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, GT7, Cyberpunk is at number 7 on their list. Horizon Forbidden West is at number 8 on both lists. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is at number 9 on their list. And Dying Light 2 is at number 10 on their list as well. Among Us is on the EU list and not on the US list. Far Cry 6 is also on that list. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is also on that list. And FIFA 22 is also on that list. So 2 FIFAs. Oh, F1 22 is also on that list. So that's how you can tell it's the EU list. I guess if it's EU, that means it's not UK, right? What does EU mean anymore? Normally I would have taken this as like, oh, this is going to be the UK stuff, but all of Europe and everything. And like, oh, right. No, the EU, I guess that's not. So is that, I guess that's not. I wonder if they're still lumping it in or not, because it seems weird to omit the UK. So I wonder if they still include it here or not. Nothing on the list specifies, nothing in this post specifies which EU they mean. Oh, so PSN EU still includes the UK. Got it. Okay. So that's probably how they're viewing it from their perspective. Another Jamie in the chat says, I'm in the UK. We can't afford video games anymore. We just chase hoops down the street with a stick. Yeah. And that's why we've got to keep Call of Duty away from Microsoft, because these people in their hoops need that game. They also have a PlayStation 4 list. It's you know, it's a lot of the same games. Need for Speed Heat is at number 16 on the US list. Which that game was free for a while, right? So I'm wondering if, you know, since this is just counting downloads, I assume that this means, you know, this is separate from money. This is just the top downloads for the entirety of 2022. So I'm assuming that means number of downloads and not amount of money brought in. They don't say how it's sorted. It just says top downloads. So I wonder if that means if I downloaded a game and deleted it and downloaded it again, if that would count on this list. I wonder what the actual metric is here. I'm looking at the PS4 list to see if anything jumps out. Among Us is on the PS4 list. Gang Beasts is on the PS4 list for the US. In the EU, The Crew 2 is on that list. F122, The Forest. The Forest is in at number 10 in the EU. Interesting. PSVR games, Beat Saber tops both. This is actually, no, not quite the same, but as far as PlayStation VR games go, Beat Saber is at the top for both the US and for the EU, or US and Canada and EU. Job Simulator at number 2 for both regions. Super Hot VR at number 3, and Creed Rise to Glory at number 4. And then from there, it starts to differentiate. Swordsman VR is the number 5 game in the US and Canada, but Sniper Elite VR is the number 1 game in the EU. Sniper Elite did not make the US list. Some things never change. Sniper Elite, a European game for Europeans. That's not even to say it's a bad game. It's neat, but Sniper Elite just feels like a game that always seems to appeal to that region more than in the US. Batman Arkham VR is still on the list for the US. I mean, we're talking about PlayStation 1, you know, PlayStation 4 VR stuff, so it's not like there's been a ton of new games there. But I feel like that sums up VR in a lot of ways. Like, there are people out there still downloading the old shit because it's all still new to them, and they're just like, I don't know, what's this Batman thing? And then they put out a free-to-play list that combines PS5 and PS4. Fall Guys is the number 1 game for all territories, beating out Fortnite. In the US, Fortnite is number 2, and Call of Duty Warzone/Warzone 2.0 is number 3. In the EU, Call of Duty Warzone/Warzone 2.0 is number 2, and Fortnite is number 3. So just a little bit of swapsies there. But yeah, Fall Guys beat Fortnite. Which is shocking. I'm trying to think like what context that would be like. Oh, of course, but like I guess like, yeah, no, that is, no matter how you cut it, if this is like money being spent on free to play games, this is number of players playing, I don't know, but like, yeah, kids love Fall Guys. Like I see a lot of consternation in the chat of people like, Fall Guys, what the hell? But like there are I feel like the younger audience, and there are still streamers doing a lot of Fall, like there seems to be a whole lot of Fall Guys still happening. And this chart seems to back that up. The way that they are listing, I should look and see how this is sold or how this is listed on the store. But the idea that they're combining Call of Duty Warzone and Warzone 2.0 feels insane to me. Did they take Warzone down? And they took Warzone, the old one, down and then put it back up under a slightly different name or something, right? But they're still two separate products attached to two totally separate Call of Duty games. So something about combining those two games feels very wrong to me. And also the idea that those games combined did not make it to number 1, I feel undercuts some of Sony's complaints about Call of Duty being owned by Microsoft. But hey, elsewhere on the free-to-play list, Multiverses is at number 4 on both lists, followed by Overwatch 2 on both lists. Then we've got a bit of differentiation where Apex Legends is the number 6 game in North America, and Rocket League is the number 6 game in the EU, because they love soccer no matter how they can get it. Rocket League is number 7 on the North American list, and boy, a lot of pissed off people in the EU. If I understand correctly, the number 7 game in the EU is eFootball 2023. Remember that? That seemed like a thing that just pissed off every single person that got anywhere near it. Right? Unless that got turned around, I feel like all the reaction to eFootball was, oh my God, fuck this. But it is still the number 7 game in the EU for free to play. It did not make the North American list. But what did make the North American list is PUBG Battlegrounds, which did not make the EU list. That's their number 8. And in the EU, number 8 is Apex Legends. And then we've got another swap here. Number 9 in the United States is Rec Room. And number 9 in the EU is Rumbleverse. Number 10 in the US is Rumbleverse. And number 10 in the EU is Rec Room. So a lot of the same games in slightly different orders with some minor changes. eFootball. Man. PUBG, yeah, and PUBG, like, I know. I'm sure Will Smith is still streaming PUBG on a regular basis, right? I feel like he is the one person I know that is still like, man, you want to play some PUBG? It's gotten really good again, Like he is the PUBG evangelist, the only one that I know. I don't know if he is still playing a lot of it or not, but he's on Fortnite now. Oh man. Good to see Rumbleverse, making the list. I like Rumbleverse a lot. I want to play more of it. I'm following their updates really closely when they put out their like, hey, mid-season this, we're doing this, and reading what they're adding to the game. I'm like, oh, that's cool stuff. I should get back in there. They're adding quads. They're adding four player teams pretty soon here, which I don't know. I haven't really dug into the team stuff at all. But maybe we should give that a look. And that's their list. Interesting to see it kind of broken down like that across territories and some of the differences there. And seeing that like stuff like Sifu makes the US list for PS5 games. Like seeing the smaller games that made it onto the list. Sifu, Stray. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is on the US PS5 list, but I guess that got a new release on PS5, right? Question from the chat here: is League actually dying in North America? I honestly, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you a damn thing about if people care about League of Legends or not, because I don't know anyone that plays League. I don't think I know a single person that plays League. All my friends are Dota players, so I don't know a damn thing about where League is at. They're kind of putting North American League of Legends esports out to pasture. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be. Yeah, I don't know. Like the thing you always hear is that League is always very quietly massive, and so unless you're engaging with that scene directly, it's very easy to never hear about League of Legends ever. But I don't know. I feel like I've heard more people talk about Valorant in the last 12 months than League. That's for sure. But yeah, I don't know. They've got their fighting game in the works, and they've got Valorant, and they did the deal with Microsoft to add all those characters and unlocks to Game Pass, which seems like it matters. But like, yeah, as far as like esports and all that, I don't know, because esports always seems like a scam is a hard word. Esports has always seemed like a very rotten business, and I feel like you see a lot of people. I think there are legitimate aspects to it these days, but it still looks like guys in suits who love crypto taking advantage of kids who love video games. And it's always looked like that. It's always been some slick talking jerk. It's always been some guy who looks like walking cocaine telling you about how big of a deal this is, and then a bunch of kids getting ripped off along the way. And now, I don't know, like the last handful of years with the rise of teams and their training facilities and individual content creators being stars in their own right, it feels like some of the players have maybe, I don't know, like some of it felt like a little bit bigger, but also when you have like, what was it? The team that went public and then now they're in fucking FaZe. Yeah. FaZe went on NASDAQ and now they're fucking doing terribly, right? Like from a business perspective, they're falling on quite hard times, right? So yeah, I don't know, but that feels like a situation where like the people who wanted to get their money got their money, right? And now they're like, oh, the business is tanking. That's cool. We're going to golden parachute over to this other weird thing. Like I don't know. Like I feel like the Venn diagram of esports executives to crypto enthusiasts is just a fucking circle, man. Right? So, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people get caught in the middle of all of that, and yeah, I don't know. It's I checked out some of the Call of Duty esports stuff that they've been doing lately, and I think that stuff presents really poorly. I've always felt that way. They're like, Overwatch, a lot of first person shooters just look like think about what you need to do. And so I've actually, for someone who fucking really doesn't care for esports, and as someone who really thinks that a lot of the business people in that community have really come off as grifters and have really been grifters, as someone who's kind of been around to see it happen in multiple cycles, all the way back to when MLG was trying it 20 years, whatever it was, like, it's always seemed fucking bad. It's always seemed bad for players. It's always seemed like people trying to take advantage of players. And then eventually you have the story that hits and say, did you know that only like the top 8 players in esports period are making a living, and the rest of them are, like, hey, I made $5,000 this year, but I had to live in the hype house and do all this training and, and all of that crazy shit. It used to feel like it was relegated for a while there in StarCraft 2 days. It felt like it was relegated to Korea, that type of exploitation. But like, no, this is exactly what it is. But I feel like the whole thing is just cursed because they keep trying to make esports out of games that don't present well to a general audience. And this is the stuff I think about a lot when it comes to this is, how do you make esports palatable in a mainstream sense? Remember when, there was that while there that ESPN was, they put Evo on ESPN, 3 or something, 2 or 3, 9, whatever it was. And they were trying to find a way to make esports work. And especially when real sports went away during the pandemic, you had an opportunity there for esports, and esports experienced expanded viewership over the course of that. And then football came back and people were like, oh, fuck this. But in terms of like trying to make those things as big as actual sports, you need to have something that people can look at and understand. And the first person games, especially, I think don't present well. And so when I'm watching a Call of Duty esports competition and looking at the mode they're playing, like, I know, because I've played quite a bit of Call of Duty, I know, like, oh, I know this map. I know what they're doing. I know why they're better than I am. And I know how it's all working. But the flow of the match, even in terms of like who's ahead and who's really doing this and what's going to happen here, because they're only really showing one first-person perspective of the action, you never really get a sense of what's happening on the field. And so the idea that we're this many years in and something like Call of Duty still doesn't have a field view for spectators or for esports commentators, for codcasters, whatever it is, like that if it does have that, they're not using it, is really bizarre. Because it's not something that's watchable. Like when you look at football, even if you don't understand the nuance of football, and I don't, what the fuck is holding, the rules of football, I understand in a basic sense of like, yeah, you get 4 downs to get 10 yards, and yeah, you can't fuck people up too much, or that's bad. But you look at the field and you go, oh, this team's trying to move the ball that way. But they're all the way back here. They've got a long way to go. It's very easy to go like, oh shit, yeah, they've got a long way to go. And the score is this and the time is this. So, hey, this is going to be hard they better get on it. Like you can start to get wrapped up in the story, the nuance, that aspect of a sports game, of a football game, without knowing jack shit about it. Other than just like, oh yeah, the yardage or whatever. Yeah, you need to, you got to do this. And so when you look at Call of Duty or Overwatch and you're like, okay, I know that in this Overwatch mode, they're fucking pushing this fucking payload one way or the other, but I don't know enough about this map to know how far they are. I don't know, like, okay, are they doing well right now or not? I need to be able to like look at a thing and go, oh, they're fucked. Or I need to be able to glance at it and know what the situation is like that, whether I know the game or not. If Overwatch esports only appeals to people who play Overwatch, who fucking gives a shit? They could just be playing Overwatch. Like if the people who are playing Overwatch are instead watching Overwatch, like that's a zero-sum thing. They need to find ways to make that appealing to people who will never play Overwatch. If they truly want to make it big enough to end up on television the way they think they want to get to, they have to think about that presentation layer. And they just aren't. Or if they are, I'm sure it's a very hard problem to fix. But like when I think about Overwatch in particular, where it's like, okay, you've got to push a payload back and forth, very easy to illustrate. You can even just put a meter on screen that removes it from the map. And like, okay, you're going to go first person sometimes to show that view. But God damn it, man, pull the fucking camera out. Let people see what the hell is going on. Let people understand like what this push is doing. And MOBAs, I think, can be better about it. MOBAs, by virtue of their perspective, is that kind of pulled out field view, but too often you're seeing what the player sees. as opposed to like, okay, like show me the entirety of the full length of this lane. How far on this lane? How are they pushing this lane effectively or not? I don't know, because I don't know the map. So I look at it and go like, all right, I don't know. He's fighting guys. He's getting last hit on these guys, I guess. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. So you just need to find ways to make that palatable to more people. And some of them do it better than others. I'm not saying, obviously, like, but I don't know if they do it every international or if it was just but the international where they had the stream that was like, hey, we're doing commentary for people that don't know the game. I thought that was really smart. I thought that was a really cool idea. When they're just like, here are the commentators that are going to try to explain more about what the game is, and they're not gonna just shout, he's got the MKB, and you're like, oh, what the fuck, what the fuck, what are you talking about, you assholes? So like, yeah, I think that there's so much more you could do to at least try to make it more palatable to that audience. Of course, like, will that audience come and actually watch it is a totally different conversation, right? And for that, you have to have human stories. You have to have human interest stories in the players. You have to treat the players right to make the players feel like they are the stars and actually like pay them well enough to where they are. And like, but if the stories become like, look at this guy, he's been living in a house with the rest of his teammates for the last year and a half and doing nothing but playing this game, and they're giving him $11,000 to do it. Yay. And meanwhile, fucking Cocaine Corvette over here is laughing all the way to the bank with some sponsorship money that didn't go to the players. But whoops, the whole thing fell apart. Who could have guessed that this didn't last? Like that's the... whatever, man. It's, I think competitive gaming should be awesome. And I think that I think fighting games have a leg up in that because everything you need to know is on the screen. There's no other view you need. You could maybe argue that like, oh, you could turn on hitboxes or something like that, frame data, but like that's just going to confuse a more mainstream audience. When a mainstream audience sees life meters and guys punching each other, it's inherently understandable. They may not be able to grasp the nuance. They don't know like, oh, that guy's got more meter than that guy. That's stuff that's going to take a little bit more learning for an audience to pick up. But inherently, that guy hit that guy a bunch of times, and now this meter is shorter than this meter. This guy is winning right now. But it could still, the comeback, like you see the comeback. All of it makes sense after a little bit of time. I think anyone can pick up on that, and it can all make sense. But the rest of it just feels like people spinning plates until someone finally looks at them and goes like, hey, this is a scam, huh? And then it all comes crashing down. Like, who can we rip off who can we get to sponsor this league? We'll get the viewer number, and like, yeah, it does get viewer numbers, but it doesn't end up, again, I think it's something that, can you appeal to people who don't understand the game? I think that's the larger thing. The larger thing to grasp at is like, can you make this appeal to a wider audience? Because then you've got a funnel that like maybe people get interested in the game because they watched all of this, and they can find ways to get even bigger. So instead you end up with a situation where like it's big because the game is big. You're like, oh yeah, Overwatch Esports is big because Overwatch is big and people care about Overwatch and they'll watch it. And maybe they're satisfied with that. But when you see esports teams, being publicly traded and falling apart, and you hear all the stories about the players not making money and all, like clearly something needs to change. Like it might be big, but it doesn't seem sustainable for the people playing them. If they want to do this professionally, if you want to be a guy who's like, yeah, no, on the weekends, I went to this tournament and I played in this Overwatch tournament with my friends and we won. And yeah, all right, well, I'm back to work on Monday. Like maybe that's the level it should actually be at. and we should be abolishing the hype house, the whole, that aspect of esports. Maybe, maybe the leagues shouldn't be allowing that because it's not healthy. I don't know. Again, it's the viewer experience aspect of it is something I think about a lot, and but also like the money part of it, the whole money part of it is foul. And yes. And Fat Scout says hype houses are far bigger than esports. Like, yeah, sure, totally. If you get the right people signed to your thing, then of course it's the aspect of it where you go like, oh, well, yeah, like we're technically an esports team, but also we've signed people who just stream games, and they're way bigger and making more money that way than they ever did. That's why you see people like, oh, I'm retiring from competition, but I'm still going to stream the game I'm known for, because turns out I can make more money streaming Fortnite than playing it, professionally, and it's way less stress and way less whatever. And maybe that's the way this all goes. But then at that point, those people don't need to be affiliated with an organization, do they? Like, maybe they need an agent, but they probably don't need a full-on public company. They don't need like, hey, I'm out here streaming Fortnite so that the fucking CMO can buy another car next year. That's a we're getting into a whole separate thing there. But anyway, fucking esports, man. I don't know. Someone's gonna crack it someday in a way that's gonna blow it open to a whole new audience, and that is my whole thing. That is what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that esports is not like viewed by a lot of people now, or that it's some small potatoes thing. It's more that like for the size it's at, it feels like it is still a rotten business. And so how do you turn the corner on that? And I think it is, if you can find a way to make a game that is mainstream viewable, then that is how you get the sponsorship money in. They got sponsorship money in for a while because everyone thought esports was going to be the next big thing, and so you had Taco Bell and some of these other mainstream brands that were willing to come in and be a part of it. And then they were like, oh, wait, you put our brand next to this racist who said a bunch of stuff on stream, and oh, wait, oh, God, oh. Like, hang on, this whole thing isn't working. And I think a lot of those brands moved on to whatever the next thing was, at least the major brands. To where they only feel safe partnering with the major leagues. And then, whatever. Support your local fighting game scene. That's the actual answer. Why don't we get into some emails, huh? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in your emails to me, and I will read them. That is my promise to you. We'll start with this one from David from York in the UK, where it is currently very cold. I just finished Need for Speed Unbound, and despite its rough edges, I enjoyed it a fair bit more than the last two Forza Horizons. I think purely because getting new cars and winning things felt like an achievement, a feeling I never got playing the recent Horizon games. Do you think there's any chance of the next Forza Horizon changing its progression system to feel less like a barrage of unlocks, or is that too ingrained in what the series is now? I don't know. I think that they've gone a couple of different ways with this over time, where they've, how they've limited races to certain classes versus, hey, you can enter whatever race in whatever car you're in, and we'll adjust around you to make sure the experience is acceptable, which is not quite the same thing that you're asking, but it is a thing of like, should a car feel like an upgrade? Should the next car you get always feel like, oh, now I'm in this? Forza has always taken the approach of like Car Enthusiast, where you're like, oh, I want to get this actually really crappy car now because I like it, or hey, I'm going to get this car that's a little bit worse than mine, but it's front wheel drive, and I just want to do that for a while. And so, I think that's just the nature of the Forza games, is that because they are built from this like car enthusiast perspective a lot of the time. And that's the stuff when they get out there and talk about it and when the man tried when the man wanted, it looked like he was going to fuck the cars. This is what we're talking about, right? It's their approach to cars and car culture, whereas in Need for Speed, I think they are approaching it much more from video games and what would a video game do. It would have a progression like this, and you would earn enough money, but this would be, this is the next tier of cars probably that you would be looking at, maybe buying. And so it's sort of a different structure in a lot of ways, whereas Need for Speed has never been about like, you've got 100 different cars and you care about them all equally because you love cars. Whereas Need for Speed is more like, you want to beat ASAP Rocky at the race, so you need to buy this car to do it, and you need to upgrade it this way to do it. And so I think it's just a different mindset. A lot of love for Unbound in the chat, in the Twitch chat today, which I'm surprised. I played, so my initial time with that game, I thought I did not have a great time with it. I was like, this is okay. I think there's a lot of stuff about the dialogue and everything that really is rubbing me the wrong way. The visual style, I kind of take it or leave it. The driving feels okay. But when I jumped back into it and went into the online mode, and not to necessarily race online races, but to have more of a traditional open world experience and get the collectibles and just kind of drive around and get into some races with players, I had a much better time with it. And so I wonder if it's a situation where I think the story in that thing is, at least what I've seen of it, is very corny. But when you strip all of that away and just go like, here's a racing game, go drive, go race, go have fun, I think it feels pretty good. I think the racing is all right. I wish it would do. So if, when you do online races, they're class based. And so if you don't own a car that is currently in that class, it will give you a loaner. It'll say like, oh, well, you don't have one of these, so you could drive this one. And so like half the racers in that race all had the exact same car because none of us owned an A-class car yet or whatever it was. And I thought that was a little disappointing. I especially found that once I took my existing car and upgraded it to the next class, if I entered a lower class race, it didn't say, hey, you own a car that we can strip down to this class, so why don't we just do that automatically for you, and that's your car for this race. It was like, you don't own a B-class car anymore, so here's your loaner for that. I'm like, man, I wish that they handled that better, because the more time I can spend driving my cars, the more attached to that game I will feel, right? And so having the loaners and having all of that be a part of the multiplayer experience kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. But the driving itself, I think, is good. And that's a problem you eventually solve. But I don't want to have to sit there. If I like a car, I want to upgrade that as far as I can take it. But I would still like to be able to automatically go like, oh, okay, we're going to strip some of your parts off so that it fits into B class. And so on. I would much prefer that. But yeah, I don't know. That game seems like it is noticeably better than the last handful of Need for Speed games. I don't know that I love it. I'm still, I feel like I'm chasing the original Need for Speed Most Wanted, and the way that game was structured and the way that game's story was and how corny it was in the right ways. But also the gameplay of the underground games. And of course, there's a little bit of the Burnout stuff in there. Like, I think that it still just feels like there's a better Need for Speed game out there somewhere, It feels like this one isn't quite doing it the way I always am hoping for Need for Speed to get it done. Where's Razor Callahan now? They put Razor Callahan in one of the mobile games at some point, actually. They didn't shoot new footage of the actor or anything, but I think, Razor Callahan eventually showed up in one of those games, which I thought was kind of fun. Any chance of the next Forza Rising changing its progression system? Maybe. Some folks left that studio to go start their own new studio, and so maybe that'll result in some fresh voices in the mix there that kind of take it in a different direction, but also I think they are at a crossroads with both Forza games. We talked about Forza Motorsport, I think, last week in terms of, you know, is that game just going to be another one of those, but it looks way better? Or is it going to be, you know, are they going to dramatically rebuild the progression in different ways that make it kind of feel fresh? But I think both of those games need to find ways to make winning races matter, in ways that they kind of don't now. Because, you know, right now it's like you get currency. You know, you win races and you get, here's 40,000 credits, and if you turn the difficulty up, you would have got more credits. But here you go, and now go buy whatever car you want, and then drive whatever race you want in that car. And again, we will adjust it around you. So if you want to drive the entire game in a B-class car, you kind of can, I think, right? I think the Hot Wheels stuff actually has a more rigid progression than the main game, which is actually kind of weird because, like, you say, like, oh, maybe this would be cooler with a more rigid progression, and then they put that into the Hot Wheels thing, and you're like, man, this sucks. Like, I feel like you're shoehorning me into some stuff I don't want to do, you know, and so I don't know what the right answer is there. But yeah, as someone who, you know, will load up Forza Horizon once every handful of months, I feel like every time I turn it on, it's like, here's 20 more wheel spins from the community manager or whatever, and you spin them and you're like, oh, okay, I got more cars. I already have too many cars. What am I gonna do with all these cars? I unlock the Windows boot up sound as a horn. That's actually great. I'm here for that. But yeah, they have made the act of acquiring a car, which is actually so crazy when you think about, like, their stated goal of, like, really caring about cars and car culture and all of that. They throw out so many cars over the course of you owning a Forza game that it makes it all meaningless. And you're like, oh, I unlocked a car. Who cares? Remember Ridge Racer? When you would unlock a car and they had a whole sequence of just like, here's your new car being backed off the back of a semi. Look at this fucking thing. It looks so good. And you're like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah. Look at this fucking car. It's grip driving, so I'm never going to drive it. But look at this fucking car. I'm so excited. Yeah, more ways to make more cars matter probably would help, I guess. Instead of just like sprinkling cars on you every 20 minutes. It's like, oh, spin this thing. Oh, you got another Miata. I'm like, oh, great. Do I already have 3 Miatas? That's probably another thing, is like they let you own multiple copies of the same car in Forza, which makes sense, right? Because you might want to have one tuned one way and one tuned another way. There shouldn't be, I guess there shouldn't be anything stopping you from doing it, but like, I don't know. That almost feels like it should be a toggle of just like, hey, I already have one. I don't want to. I don't want 2 of these. Unlock a car that I don't own already. How about? And so I, you know, over the course of me playing the last Forza, I don't know that I ever actually spent any of my credits on cars, because you get so many of them along the way that I'm like, oh, I just bought a car that I like, and then I spent a bunch of money on upgrades for that car, and upgrade it to like A class, because I don't want to do the super, the S1, S2, you know, that's a little too fast. I like a good, you know, something that resembles something street legal. That's usually where I like to sit. That's my personal car culture there, is like, you know, the upper end of street legal or something, you know, the regular cars tuned well, I guess. But yeah, it's a hard, I think that's going to be one of those situations that every single player wants something a little bit different out of the progression and unlock structure, and you're never going to be able to truly satisfy everyone with it, especially in a game like Forza that prides itself on having all of these car licenses, and so they have to have this wide array of cars. But, you know, like, some of it is like silly. You know, you're like, oh, look at this SUV I unlocked. Yeah, this race car. You know, it's goofy. I like that. I like that there's just like, here's this fucked up sedan. That was always the one thing about Gran Turismo, is it felt like, you know, and before Forza existed, you know, when you would play Gran Turismo and like the first car you would get is just this fucking beater. You just look at it and go like, man, this stock ass fucking Nissan. Look at this piece of shit. But by the time you're done upgrading it, and eventually you move on to other cars, and I like that. I like okay, yeah, give me a fucking Honda Civic, and I'm gonna bolt as much bullshit to this thing as you'll let me. I'm gonna take this Honda Accord and I'm going to slam it to the fucking ground, and I'm gonna put hella speakers in it. Actually, I want the car audio. A game did that, didn't they? Whether you could upgrade the car audio, and maybe like the bass would hit a little hard. I forget what it was. Maybe I'm imagining that. I had a crazy dream last night. I had two crazy dreams last night. One in which I was playing a 3DS rhythm game that didn't exist, and I was having a lot of trouble with it because of color blindness. The other dream I had, I'm going to say this because I don't think I'm going to make this as an actual product, but I do think that this could be, you could maybe sell this in a Spencer's Gifts or something. I think this would make a lot of money. It's a pair of slippers. This is all I remember about this aspect of the dream. I don't know where I was wearing the slippers, what was going on. It's a pair of really fuzzy slippers, and they're 9/11 themed slippers. Now hear me out. On one slipper, you've got like this, and this is coming up like maybe 6 or 8 inches off the top of the slipper. You got an airplane. And then on the other foot, you got the Twin Towers. And so you can like click your heels together to make, so this, I think you can sell that in Spencer's Gifts. I think a certain type of person would buy these slippers. Think about it. No, I don't know. That's a dream I had last night, that those slippers existed. I don't know. What does that mean? What does that mean about my brain? That's like, yeah. But I woke up, middle of the night, wake up out of the dream, and all I could think was like, that's a good idea. Like sitting there half asleep in the middle of the night going, yeah, fuck yeah. No, yeah. That would be really good. So I don't remember what the rhythm game was in the other dream either, but let's go on to the next email. Mr. DB from Southern California writes in and says, has a question about the Virtual Boy. How did you go about using this device? I put it on the floor and laid face down because it was the most comfortable way to use the thing. What an incredible piece of technology. The Nintendo Labo is a goddamn fraud. Yeah, face down, ass up. That's the way I like to Virtual Boy. No, I put it on a table. It had the brackets, it had the stand, and so you'd set it on a table and just kind of lean into it. And then your neck would hurt after about 20 minutes. So maybe you're onto something. Maybe that is a better way to do it. But but yeah, I always just the handful, I bought a Virtual Boy. I have probably used that Virtual Boy for less than an hour of in-game time since I bought it. I bought it when they were blowing them out at KB Toys, when they were just like, we got to get these things out of here. Give us $20 and we will give you this fucking Virtual Boy. Please, God, get it out of here. And so I bought mine then, and I bet I've used it for less than an hour. Because why would you? I probably played more Virtual Boy at trade shows. I remember going to CES and seeing it, and they had it off to the side, and they had Teleroboxer in there, and I remember playing it. Go, this is awesome. This is like a new Punch-Out game. They made a new Punch-Out game, but with robots, and it's in 3D, and it's all red. Well, the Punch-Out part is at least kind of cool, but yeah. Yeah, Virtual Boy. Brian from Michigan writes in and says, is Elden Ring just a good Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning? They're both action RPGs whose story was crafted in part by a famous fantasy author. One was released to mediocre reviews and sad trombones, the other to epic fanfare and rave reviews. No. Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning is an okay video game. It is an action RPG, you know, you are out there. The combat in that game is okay. It is a big world. You're running around doing quests. Like, it is the type of B game that is not made anymore. It is absolutely a decent little B game for what it is. And that they did that re-release not that long ago. It was like kind of a strange, like, why are you doing this? But Reckoning is actually a fully okay video game. You know, it is not gonna, it never was gonna burn up the charts or anything, but is a perfectly serviceable action RPG thing, and I thought it worked okay. Unlike Elden Ring, that piece of garbage. Like, what is that? All this weird finger porno that, like, it's disgusting. Elden Ring is for sickos, degenerates, with all the finger. It's gross. That game is gross. No, I don't know. You know, obviously, like, the combat is dramatically different, and you know, Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning is just a very straightforward, straight up video game. That, like, if you were between Elder Scrolls games, you could do a lot worse than playing Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. But or Fables, I guess. You know, like, it has a little bits and pieces of some of that stuff in there too. But it's just a very straightforward, regular ass game, the kind that they don't make a lot of anymore. And so, you know, it's totally all right. And Elden Ring is, you know, obviously from a combat perspective, a very dramatically different thing. And in terms of pointing you in the direction of the next, I can't believe we're actually having this conversation in a serious way. You've trapped me into some kind of ridiculous conversation, but, you know, Elden Ring is much more about the discovery of the world at your own pace, on your own time, and your own direction. And, you know, it is much less hand-holdy than, like, this game with a quest log that's like, run over here and kill these rats, you know. And so it's sort of a different thing. Let's see. Guillaume from Montreal writes in and says, you mentioned recently that you weren't sure what the games coming out in the near future for Xbox were in light of that January showcase. Listening to that, I also questioned myself about what was coming out. And remember, they said back in their June conference that every game we're showing is scheduled to release in the next 12 months. So I went back and rewatched that whole conference and wrote down every single new and full release they showed and put them down here with a scheduled date or if they've been released since. That's fun. And so these are games that theoretically would need to come out by June to meet that stated goal. Redfall, early 2023. Silksong, no date. High on Life has been released. The Riot Games partnership has been released. Plague Tale Requiem has been released. Forza Motorsport is due in spring. Overwatch 2 is out. Aura History Untold is in the Insider program now with no full release date. Arc 2 is just due sometime in 2023. Sorry, Arc 2 featuring Vin Diesel. Sometime in 2023. Scorn is out. Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn is due early 2023. Minecraft Legends just has a 2023 date. Lightyear Frontier, spring 2023. Gunfire Reborn is out. The Last Case of Benedict Fox is due in the spring. As Dusk Falls is out. Naraka Blade Point is out on console. Pentiment is out. Grounded has had its 1.0 release. Erebon Shadow Legacy is due out sometime in 2023. Diablo 4 is due out June 6th. Ravenlock is 2023. Cocoon is 2023. They announced a Cocoon game? Finally. I don't remember that at all. It's not. I assume it's not based on the film. But boy, what if it was? Wolong Fallen Dynasty is due out March 3rd. Persona 5 Royale is out. Persona 3 Portable and 4 Golden are due out January 19th. Hey, that's this week. The Kojima Microsoft project, there's been zero information on that, and Starfield has a 2023 date. So, thank you for that list. You know, that's That is useful. Yeah, that's and we'll hear more from Microsoft. They did make that event official last week when we were talking about it. It was just a Windows Central report, but they have gone on to say that yes, they're going to talk about Redfall and Forza and Minecraft Legends. And then Starfield had to get out and say like, "Hey, we've got a separate event for Starfield. Fucking calm down." So that's good to know. Yeah, I really want to play Diablo 4. I am really looking forward to a new. I really liked Diablo 3 a lot, and obviously that game launched with its weird real money stuff, and they patched that out, and eventually found a good middle ground. I think that game is just a very easy game to pick up and enjoy for a brief period of time, and get back into, like you can play that in short bursts and still have a good time. And that's how I have been playing it more recently. It's been quite some time since I've actually gone back to it, but like I started appreciating the console versions of it quite a bit. I think that's why I was disappointed with that the Diablo 2 re-release. Or the re-release they did. It's just like it wasn't the console. I was hoping the console version would have that same treatment. And it kind of didn't have that. Bear Streak in the chat says, I've played the Diablo 4 beta. I'm very concerned about the microtransactions and battle pass. Yeah. Well, I would imagine that they would kind of skew back in the direction of trying to make that right in lieu of the reaction to Diablo Immortal. But I'm sure the Diablo Immortal probably made quite a bit of money, so who knows what lessons they're actually learning. But yeah, I thought the Diablo 3 controller support, I played most of it on PC, but I actually then started over on console and played a ton there too. And yeah, just a really solid game. So Diablo 4, I hope it is great. There are a billion different ways in which that game could be messed up, right? I mean, I feel like there are a ton of action RPGs that are coming out in the Diablo vein that really didn't find the right balance. I know people swear by a game like a Path of Exile, and I want to like that game, but just never could get into it. Yeah. On that same note, yes, I saw the menu for Suicide Squad leaked out. It looks like a mission select menu or like a matchmaking menu or like a party lobby menu or something. And people are freaking out about that because it shows a battle pass, and it sounds like that battle pass is going to be cosmetics only. And yeah, I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of that entire game. That it looks potentially interesting, but I just don't know. Yeah. Tom Warren is also, we're getting more news out of the chat as I speak here. Tom Warren is reporting that Microsoft is looking to make a bunch of job cuts tomorrow. Additional reports suggest the software giant could lay off more than 10,000 employees. Jesus. That would, yeah. So 5% of the workforce, they have over 220,000 employees, which would equate out to over 10,000 layouts. This comes from Sky News, and The Verge is re-reporting it. Bloomberg is also reporting, announced in the engineering divisions, significantly larger than the 1% cut to the workforce last year. Man. Yeah. Quote from Nadella here from a handful of weeks ago saying, the next 2 years are probably going to be some of the most challenging. We did have a lot of acceleration during the pandemic, and there's some amount of normalization of that demand. On top of it, there's a real recession in some parts of the world. Yeah. Oof. Well, I'll be curious to see how that goes across the board for them, and how the gaming Division is treated through that process. We'll see. We'll see. Joe from Essex writes in and says, my barber is retiring to stream Call of Duty on TikTok, which is a hell of a email subject line. I went to my barber this week and had to wait an hour to get a trim. He is good, worth the wait. He spent the whole time talking to customers about how he is stopping cutting hair full time and giving up the lease on his shop because he makes more streaming Call of Duty on TikTok. I listened in fascination as he laid out how it all worked, including having a TikTok manager who he could call and talk to if any issues arise. I am writing to tell you this because his whole shtick is to fuck with people via proximity chat while playing DMZ mode. He pretends to be a younger person whose battery is flat in his controller, shouting out, Mommy, my battery is flat. Will you get me another one? Mom. Obviously, people rush the room he is in, only to get ambushed by him and his mate, who are sat on top of filing cabinets waiting for them. I don't know if I've seen this exact person, but I've seen someone doing this. I've definitely seen a clip of, and it's a great trick. Like the number of people, the number of proximity chat scams people are running in Call of Duty is I wish I played that game during like daylight hours more often when I could make more noise. Normally I play it when the kids are asleep and literally in this room, so I can't do any kind of voice chat. But I would love to have bad interactions with people. But the idea of like, oh my God, my battery's dead, I can't move. And then people run in the room and you just fucking gun them down and laugh. It's outstanding. So there's just the amount of silly shit. I killed a guy who was who had me dead to rights, man. I was playing Warzone and I had backed myself into a room with no way out. I had thrown down a cluster mine, and this guy was on voice chat and I was not. And he's like, "Oh, you're going to throw a cluster mine down, huh? What's that going to do?" So clearly he was like watching me from a distance. And that was the only door out of that room. And I was like, fuck, man. If I wait in here long enough, and he's just like, well, what's the play? So what's the play? What's the play? What are you going to do? And I'm getting like a little pissed at this point. I'm like, man, fuck this motherfucker. And then someone got up behind him and he got in another fight. And so I took off running in the direction of the circle, got to the next cluster of buildings, and picked up a bunch more stuff, got myself set, and I was kind of like there for a little bit, figuring out like, well, what am I going to do next? Because I know there's at least going to be one guy, if not two, running this way. And sure enough, that fucker came back, and he was still on his microphone running his fucking mouth. I was like, oh, okay. And I fucking got the drop on him and smoked his fucking ass. And I was like, yeah, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. And he was not that good. Because I was not that good. I clumsily got the drop on him and still got him. So, yeah, those moments feel real good. And the chat shit in that game is real ridiculous. And yeah, so you see other people. I've seen the battery dead thing. And there's a lot of this on TikTok. That's where I've been seeing most of it, because I'm not going to go seek out individual YouTube channels for people that are doing it for hours and hours. There's that. There's the person using a voice changer to sound like a kid, and then just getting on Teams and being like, "Oh, what's up, guys? My mom said I'm going to do this," and just acting like a child and playing with players who are just like, "All right, dude, whatever, man." And then the guy goes and kills a bunch of guys because he's actually quite good at the game, despite acting like a kid, and them going like, "Oh my God, you clutched, fucking wiped that entire team," or whatever. And then there's another guy who only uses a knife, or does not use guns. I guess he'll run people over, and he's put together a bunch of highlight clips of him stabbing people and having the people on voice chat get so fucking angry, as they are being knifed. Is fun as well. Anyway, there was a lot more chat about gifts, how he gets paid, viewers versus followers, doing game footage in portrait, and is considering whether endorsing a scrotum shaving company is a good idea. And the quote here is, yeah, but what if Gillette want to endorse me next year? They won't touch me if I'm associated with ball shavers. It was super interesting stuff. It seems TikTok are taking the game stuff seriously. Yeah, so TikTok does have a person that is devoted to, I'm sure at least one person that I know of, that I have interacted with previously, who, yes, is the head of like kind of gaming and partnerships and that aspect of TikTok. It is something that I get the impression they are trying to do more with over time. And yeah, I don't know about, I wonder how long this will last. Okay, because think about it. Okay, TikTok is, the thing about TikTok is that it feels very fleeting. And this is a shtick here that's going to run cold, right? I mean, how long are people going to watch videos of people running proximity chat scams in Call of Duty? And then what do you do next? What's your second act? What do you pivot into if your entire thing is built around that gimmick? Can you bring that to other games as another game gets popular? Not necessarily. And so short term, yeah, I'm sure this TikTok money is probably pretty rad, and it's probably pretty rad to be doing that instead of cutting hair. But I would be very careful as to what happens when that dries up. And, you know, maybe you're already big and the algorithm favors you long enough that you can figure it out, but like, you know, I guess you can always go back to cutting hair. I mean, that's the thing, is like, that's a skill that is, you know, that's going to last you a lifetime. So, you know, ride it out while you can, and hopefully it'll work out. But if it doesn't, you've always got that. So yeah, I guess giving up a lease and getting out of it full time, like, not the end of the world, especially if you're actually good at it. So, yeah, that's funny. But yeah, TikTok's weird. So when Twitch was broken the other day and I streamed the podcast on TikTok, I made $4. That's not enough to actually get I got $4 in a TikTok account now. Pretty psyched. Go and follow Fred Durst 2000 for more hot shit. So as soon as I actually get to 10,000 followers on TikTok, I think I could actually stream games to TikTok from OBS as opposed to pointing the camera at the screen or whatever it is. So go follow that account so I can try that, because it sounds real stupid. Let's see. What else? G writes in and says, Onyx, but only Sticky Fingers and Fredro Starr are going on tour for the 30th anniversary of Back to Fuck Up. And it got me thinking, were the MOP big Onyx fans? I feel like Onyx really mainstreamed the I'm going to yell as loud as possible into this microphone genre of hip hop that MOP so ably took over, albeit briefly, nearly a decade later. Which is a better song, Slam or Ante Up? And why do we have to pick, really? We don't have to pick, but Ante Up is the answer. I mean, look, I love Slam. Don't get me wrong. Slam is wonderful. But Ante Up. Both versions, by the way, the remix, the original. Ante Up is fantastic. Slam is fun, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, who else is, you know, I feel like Busta Rhymes has made quite a bit of money yelling into a microphone, like with that, like bringing that type of energy, not necessarily in the same way that Onyx or MOP have, but yeah, I'm trying to think, like, who else is in the yelling genre of hip hop. I don't know that I have a good answer. The secret is, like, how do you yell into a microphone without blowing the microphone out? The way you kind of sound like you're yelling without actually yelling. It gets into some of the same stuff that I think, like, screamo vocalists probably have to figure out is like, okay, how do you do that for 45 minutes straight at a show and not just shred your fucking voice? And so how do you figure out the way to sound like you are doing grindcore voice without killing? You go, that my throat was abrased by doing that because I've been podcasting for the last few hours. So, that's a skill that I don't have. I never figured it out. And so anytime I had to yell into a microphone, I would just yell into a microphone, and it's not the right way to do it. Let's take maybe a couple of more emails here before we call it a day. Lee asks, just wondered, do you ever get in a gaming slump? And if so, how do you get over it? In my mind, if it happens to even you, then there is hope for all of us. Sure, I guess. But I think for me, it is more a factor of I don't really... Like, sometimes I will get slightly disenfranchised with, like, recent games. And so the bulk of what my work has been covering recent games. And so sometimes you'll have a situation where, like, man, there's all the games coming out this month I am not enjoying. I don't even want to, like, cover them or whatever. And then, a month will pass and be like, oh, some fucking bangers came out, I feel like 2022, so I've been putting together my top 15 or whatever, list of games I loved this year or last year. There's a ton on there in a wide variety of genres and types of games and styles of games. And so that really, I think today's players are spoiled because there are so many different types of games coming out. And it used to not quite be like that. It was like there were 5 types of games, depending on whether you were playing on console or PC, depended on, which SKU of that you got, whether it's like, okay, well, you've got space sims and you've got RTS games and you've got the 4X games. You've also got some role-playing games. You've got first-person shooters. And then you've got some third-person shooters scattered in there too. And that's about it. And now there's so many different games, big and small, and a ton of smaller games coming out all the time that, you missed. And so you can even go back and play games from 8 months ago that are great that you just totally skipped over at the time for whatever reason. And, it's perfectly acceptable to go back to that stuff. And so I think like the idea of a slump is really more about like, broadening your horizons or whatever. But like also, I think the way I would traditionally get past it is I've got games that I could play every day. And Call of Duty became one of those this year, and so sometimes it's a new game, but like I can always go for some Trackmania at the end of the day, right? If there's just like nothing else coming out, I'm like, oh man, blah. Like I can always go back and play a few hours of Trackmania and just have a good relaxing time with that and unwind, and eventually it'll come back around, And so even in cases where you feel like you're in a rut and that there's nothing coming out that you like, there's always something you either skipped over at the time or a classic that you want to go back to and play again or whatever. And so I feel like I have a really good balance these days where, I'm trying to play a lot of current stuff. There are games that just kind of fall outside my purview, and I'm okay with that, Like there are games that I'm just like, I'm okay never playing this. I'm okay never playing Scorn, for example. That's fine. There are games that I play for 45 minutes or something. They're like, okay, I don't know that I'm going to continue playing this game. I'm going to walk away from this, and that's okay. Pendiment is a great example of a game I played for about an hour and was like, this seems really well crafted. This seems like it was a real labor of love, and I don't want to play any more of it. I'm okay. And so I'm much more okay about that and moving on from things. So, and occasionally you get into this mode, and this is what happened with Stray, and it was only because I heard that Stray was not that long, where like I should have stopped playing Stray. But like the way that the reaction to Stray, the way people were like, this is an amazing experience. I'm like, no, it's not. What? All right, I guess I need to finish Stray now to figure out what the fuck you people are talking about. And then I just finished Stray out of spite and was like, man, no. Stray is not all that. It's a disappointment, if anything. And so, yeah, I don't know. Stray starts strong and then it never, like, Stray doesn't make good on its core premise of, like, the opening of Stray. I won't spoil Stray, I guess. But the beginning of Stray and the ending of Stray, it's not, like, yes, now this story is wrapped up in a satisfying, like, no. It's like, I guess we're here now. I guess this is that now. But, you don't have to play anything. No one can. No team of people can these days. There's no publication out there that is big enough to truly cover 100% of everything coming out. And it hasn't been that way for a long time. And so I think that's just the way things are now. And I think that everyone is dealing with it in different ways in terms of like, what games are we going to cover or not cover? Or, that's just a very different conversation now than it used to be 10 years ago. And as such, I think it's very easy to stay out of a slump because there's always something. There's always something. That's not to say that every single night I play video games, there are some nights when I listen to music instead and do that in a more dedicated fashion and enjoy it. Or, it's like, I'm just going to chat on Discord and listen to some music or do whatever. Yeah, man, I think that there's so many games coming out now that it doesn't happen like it used to. Back in the 90s, in the 2000s, early 2000s, especially, the PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube era was the hardest to stay up for it, I guess, because when you were reviewing third-party games, you were playing 3 different versions of it and like making notes about like, well, this one has better textures and this one takes longer to load, but everyone's just going to play the PS2 version anyway because that's the install base leader, and like, who fucking cares? And the GameCube controller sucks. Different people are going to get pissed in different ways as you're writing this, and it's going to happen. You're like, whatever. The Xbox kids are going to be all pissed off again because they don't understand how we review games. Fine. The GameCube people will be all weird again because they're always weird, and you just get used to that aspect of it. But like, that was the most annoying time because you're just like, okay, I'm going to play through this, I guess, on PS2 because that's the version they sent first. And now I need to check the Xbox and GameCube versions. I don't need to play through them completely, but I need to make sure they're addressed and blah, blah, blah. Like, that was a time when it was very easy to just get like burned out on it and just be like, all right, I'm not going to play any games in my spare time anymore. Or actually, that at the time, like the thing I did then was on the clock, I was playing console games because I was the console game reviewer. That was, it was all separate at the time. And then I would go home and play PC games a lot, like whatever, especially like when Quake 3 was new and shooters like that were out. I was very much like playing those competitive I was playing those shooters on my off time, and then like on the clock, like reviewing 1,000 different console games. And yeah, I don't know, that worked out pretty well too, because it kept a weird separation. And then eventually we realized, like, the PC version is just the same as all these other versions anyway. Just the controller support is broken. So we should probably just merge all this anyway. And so we did, and that was that. But yeah, it's that was really the time when it was maybe hardest, I guess, is because you were really like, okay, now I've got to check this out on this platform. And it's still sort of like that. If you're truly doing your due diligence, you're still, because it's not like, the Xbox and the PlayStation 5, I feel like they've never been closer. We've never had a case where two game platforms have been that close. Maybe the exception I would say is the Xbox and the GameCube were actually relatively similar. You'd be like, the Xbox version looks a little bit sharper, but the GameCube version still looks better than the PS2 version. Like, the PS2 version looks noticeably worse from a resolution perspective, but like in texture quality perspective, but it's still the same anyway. But like, yeah, the Xbox and GameCube were really close. But PS5 and Xbox Series X, you can't go wrong. That's why it's such a dumb, like, all of the, like, which one's better? Like, it doesn't fucking matter. Which console has the games that you can't get anywhere else? Which, when you look at the way Microsoft has been shipping or not shipping first-party games lately, makes a stronger case for the PlayStation 5 these days. We'll see how this year goes, once Starfield hits and whatever else. But obviously Xbox has Game Pass, and they have Sony has their subscription service. So there's differences around the edges in terms of that. But in terms of just raw, like, if you want the best experience playing video games on a console, which one should you get? The answer is like, fuck, man, I don't know. It's whatever. Wherever your friends are, if you're going to be playing multiplayer games. But a lot of these games are cross-play now too, so even that doesn't matter the same way it used to. So you end up in a situation where you're like, well, I guess the PlayStation does have its weird triggers, and some games support that, and that's sort of interesting. I guess that's a differentiator, maybe? But, like, the idea that, like, people are out there online still beating drums for Xbox or PlayStation, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's always been stupid, but these days it is never been stupider. Every day it gets a little bit stupider, because, like, it's the same thing. It's practically the same thing. And go look at the Digital Foundry stuff, you'll find, like, oh, well, like, you'll have some cases where it's like, oh, the Xbox version of Callisto Protocol ran fucked up in a way that PS5 didn't, and then they patched it, and it was like, or whatever. But, like, you'll have some of those situations, but, like, generally speaking, not enough of a difference, especially when when a person asks you which console I should buy, they are coming to you from a perspective of they don't know anyway. They don't have, like like from a graphical perspective, they're not going to notice those subtle differences anyway. And so it's a situation where it's just like, just get what you get what your friends have. You probably should get an Xbox because of Game Pass. Like, Game Pass is probably the differentiator that makes that go in that direction, I guess. Unless you're made of money and you want to buy all your games anyway, then hey, whatever. But yeah. They're so fucking similar that unless you're like, oh, I've got to play God of War, unless you're like so hooked on the cinematic style that Sony has made, that Sony has mastered, really, that at this point, I think that they've really made that style their hallmark between Horizon and God of War and Last of Us and all this other stuff. Like, that's what they've become known for better or worse. So if you want that, then they do that, so the differentiators become way less about, like, teraflops, especially when we're talking third-party games, which most of the games people play are fucking third-party games. So it's like, kind of at the end of the day, like, whatever, do what you feel. Game Pass versus God of War is the conversation, right? Do you want access to hundreds of games, big and small, good and bad? Some of them are terrible. There are some bad games on Game Pass. Well, it's true. There are some great games on Game Pass. There's some awesome games on Game Pass. Versus, like, hey, these astounding cinematic masterpieces that a lot of people really love. A lot of people go fall head over heels. Like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever played. The Last of Us. Like, some people are fucking crazy for that stuff. I'm not so much. Like, I respect that they've found a path that works for them and people love it, and they're making these amazing looking games that you just look at and it's just like, man, it's like money is flying out of the screen. Look at how expensive this thing looks. It's incredible. But both platforms have Call of Duty, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon or ever. And that seems to be the game that people actually want to play. So get whatever. Get a PC, I guess. Hey. I'm going to get going. Thanks, everybody, for listening. What is going I got my monitor. I haven't had time to set it up, but I got that LG monitor. And so I have to do some reorganizing. This monitor here is going to go away. This monitor here is going to be the new garage monitor for garage streams. So it's going to make its way out there. This monitor, I think, is going to move over here. And then this vertical monitor that I have here is going to go over here. And then the OLED 240 hertz, 1440p, HDR, blah, 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 is going to go in the middle here. And I'm pretty excited about that, seeing how that's, I want to see how that's going to go. But I'm going to move the soundboard over. I'm going to try. I need to figure out where stuff's going to, I need to reorganize this entire desk, honestly. So it's a process and I haven't had any time to look at it. So, Super Raven says, have fun playing cable management. Here's the secret to that. Just don't manage them. Manage them by dangling them out the back. I don't know how to manage cables. I honestly don't. Like, that's not a bit. That's not a, like, I don't know. Like, I literally don't. Do I buy zip ties? Do I get one of those open? Do I open up this coil? Do I and fit all the cables into that so it's just one big thick thing? I have a Velcro tie on the other end of the PC, but it doesn't do that much. It's not doing that much. It's not managing. I mean, the cables behind this monitor, I still see a ton of them. There's a mess everywhere. I literally don't know how to do it. Behind the TV, same deal. HDMI cables every which way. Ethernet cables, all kinds of fucking shit. It's a disaster. I have no idea how to make it work. And I'm not going to start now because I don't have time. Pay someone to come in and manage these cables. But then like a week later, I'll be like, oh, I got to disconnect this PC. And then I'll fuck it all up and it'll be a disaster. Cable management. Who has the time? Not me. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll probably be starting a little bit later. I try to start around 10 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm going to the dentist tomorrow morning. Wednesday was the only day they had. So I will probably not be starting right at 10. But we'll come and hopefully I'll have some time to have hooked up that monitor by then. Gosh. But if not, whatever. I don't know. We'll figure something out. What am I going to play? That's a great question. I have no idea. No idea. We'll figure that out. If you're on the advisory panel and you have some suggestions, I'm all ears. Just don't recommend weird anime porno. Okay? See you next time. Everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And, change the filter on your heater if you haven't. They get dirtier a lot faster than you think.